Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I've brought you a video. Now my first one in the series was Sofia Coppola ranked. My second one is Lars Von Trier's filmography reviewed. I've decided what I'm going to do is go through each movie with a genuine review, discussion and analysis, and then at the very end I'll give a ranking. But I want you guys to watch this whole video minus the spoiler sections if you haven't seen the movies. I'll put timestamps below. Each movie I talk about will be a review, and then there'll be a spoiler section for certain movies that I think are worthy of it that you can skip if you haven't seen the movie before. All those timestamps will be in the description below. I will say the first 2 or 3 movies in his career I don't have too much to say about, but I promise you, as I get more interested and as I like the movies more, you get way more in-depth discussion about them. This is also a very Dogma 95 video, so some of it's been filmed on a stream, some of it's been filmed as video like this. I'll have some clips here and there. Audio levels might change, but overall I just want to give you a thorough video that goes through all his films because frankly, I think he's one of our best living filmmakers, all right? I've been really sad to hear that he has Parkinson's and he's dealing with a bunch of health issues at the moment, because not only do I think he's a captivating, fascinating, controversial figure for sure, but I think he has contributed some of the best movies I've ever seen. So I'm incredibly keen to talk about them. We will also have some loose discussions around certain controversies and little tidbits I find interesting, but we're going to go from the earliest films in his career to the most recent films in his career. Unfortunately, I did not have time to watch The Kingdom. I have started it. I am thoroughly enjoying it. But what we're going through are essentially all his feature films, starting at Element of Crime all the way up to House That Jack Built. Let's just go. All right, so the first kind of notable proper feature film of Lars Von Trier is Element of Crime. The basic setup here is there's a guy and he's investigating a string of murders, and it's sort of like through his own subconscious or this distorted view of reality. He goes through hypnosis, and what we see in the movie is this sort of surreal, trippy, noir murder investigation sort of movie. It's sort of like Seven or Zodiac, but a bit more abstract and frankly very hard to follow. As much as I appreciate a lot of ideas of this movie, reading the Wikipedia article ultimately comes out a bit more enjoyable than the film experience itself, actually watching the film. The world that this film exists in is actually quite interesting, and I would love to see this concept done with like a big budget or a better scale or just a tighter script. It's sort of like a really solid idea, but unfortunately it's just on the edge of being a really great movie and just comes out as a solid idea with okay execution, a perfectly decent first film, but also quite noticeably a first film. When you think back on it, or if you tell people about it, it's sort of like, oh, that's a really cool idea, that sounds really cool, but the actual experience of watching it is kind of a frustrating one. I was finding it very hard to follow and the script a bit clunky, but there's some good ideas there. So after that, in 1987, the second proper feature film of Lars Von Trier is Epidemic, and this is the only truly terrible Lars Von Trier film in my opinion. The setup here, the plot here is that a writer, a screenwriter played by Lars Von Trier, is making a movie about a global epidemic, a global virus that wipes out a bunch of people. Meanwhile, in the world of the film, there is actually people that are making this virus come to fruition. Sort of this meta film, right? As a screenwriter is writing about a virus, there's actually a virus being made that's going to wipe out people. And again, an idea that sounds really interesting, either could be a really funny black comedy or just a really interesting idea, but this film is utter crap. It looks crap. It's boring. There's a watermark for no good reason the entire film. Like it pops up and you're like, okay, when's that going away? It doesn't go away. There is a red watermark of the title of the film the entire time. I assume, again, this is kind of a meta joke of like, oh, we're messing with the idea, the fabric of the world you're watching, you know, like you're watching a movie about someone who's writing a movie about the plot that's going on inside the movie. Whoa, but it's like, it just doesn't work. It's a bad film. It's boring. For some reason, the only films of Lars Von Trier that are in the Criterion Collection are Element of Crime, Epidemic, and the next film, and frankly, they're some of his weakest. However, Europa I can kind of understand being a part of the Criterion Collection. Moving on to Europa just quickly, the next film. This is like weirdly normal for a Lars Von Trier film. You almost wouldn't know it's a Lars Von Trier film. There's like no edginess. It's also not very weird. It's well shot and there's actual kind of cool noir ideas, and it feels like a Hitchcock film. It feels like a proper Hitchcock film. The story is kind of clunky at times. I've seen some reviews claim that it is intentionally hard to follow, and I think no, it's unintentional. unintentionally hard to follow. It is a bit messy in its plot delivery. The story of Europa is that an idealistic American pacifist of German descent travels to Germany immediately after World War II. He's trying to help rebuild the country. While he's working as a conductor on this train, he becomes entangled in a dangerous web of political intrigue. So it's sort of this like interesting spy war film. There's some really good ideas here. There's some lovely cinematography and some really interesting framing and really interesting filmmaking here. Like, this is weirdly formal for Lars Von Trier. As his career goes on, his filmmaking gets way more abstract, way more out there, way more strange, but this is like kind of a solid film. Sort of the most clinical and structured of a film you'll see from him. In saying that though, it's also lacking a lot of the emotion, a lot of the pain, anguish, beauty of his other films. It is notably quite emotionally hollow, despite how impressive the actual filmmaking itself. It's one of those stories that, again, works a bit better on paper than it does in terms of its actual feeling and effect on you. All right, so next we have, in my opinion, the point where Lars Von Trier kind of became one of the GOATs. For some people, for a lot of people, that was with Europa. You know, he had his first two kind of attempts at making a movie. Then he had Europa. A lot of people really paid attention there. For me, it's Breaking the Waves.
Two people are joined in God.
But I don't trust you.
Oh,
She's stronger than you and me.
You don't understand, do you?
his head's full of scars. He's up to his eyeballs in drugs. He doesn't know what he's saying.
He got an Oscar nomination for Emily Watson in this film. I think it was her first movie role. The plot here is that a woman and a man get married. She's from like a very religious town. She's like balls deep in this religion, all right? Like, she is utterly obsessed with God. She believes there is a divine power. She believes everything she does and everything that happens to her is for a reason. She marries a man played by Stellan Skarsgård, who is from outside of this town, from outside of this religion. He works out in the oil rigs. They get married. We don't really see the relationship before the marriage. It almost feels like they met online or something, which obviously didn't happen back then, but it almost feels like they've just been like paired together. But there is instant like sexual chemistry. It's actually a really beautiful relationship. They hang out for about a week and then he goes off to the oil rigs and the movie follows their relationship. I won't give away the central hook, even though I think if I tell you the central hook, you'll go, holy shit, I need to watch this immediately. But for me, it was really fun experiencing what the actual hook is. So all I'll say is Stellan Skarsgård does get injured while working on the oil rigs. And the movie follows as Emily Watson, this young, naive, simple girl. Like, it is written into the movie that she is quite a simple woman, but it follows as this woman who believes in God fully and believes in faith fully, tries to navigate her husband, who she is madly, madly in love with, getting a disability, basically, becoming a disabled man, and his health is kind of like falling apart, and her trying to find any way she can to fix that. It's a naive and simple woman's quest to try heal the love of her life who has suffered a serious, serious injury. This film, in my opinion, it can be a tough watch. There's some sequences that are pretty... like, there are a lot, but at the same time, I think this is maybe the most beautiful film Lars Von Trier has made. I don't think any of this is actually that much in tongue-in-cheek. This was after Lars Von Trier himself had gone through a crisis of faith, which led to the notorious sort of Nazi comments later on with Melancholia, which we'll talk about later. But Lars Von Trier, some context for this movie is that Lars Von Trier spent his whole life believing he was Jewish or being raised under the Jewish faith, and then on his mother's deathbed, which we'll talk about this story fully later, but on his mother's deathbed, he found out his father, the person that raised him, isn't actually his father. And his actual father was German, and it kind of fractured his whole life and worldview. It fractured his relationship with his religion. He started finding new faith. I think his wife was a Christian, so he also tried to become a Christian, and I think he got baptized. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that was the story. So this movie is almost reflective of his ideas, his sort of messed up, distorted ideas around faith. And I just think this film is wonderful. It's in my top 4 on Letterboxd. It's in my wife's top 4 on Letterboxd. This is a movie that, if you meet it on its terms, if you go with it, will completely pull you in and grip you and put you through the emotional ringer. But what I will say is, despite some of its hard-going moments, I think the relationship between Stellan and Emily Watson for a good chunk of this movie is absolutely beautiful and hypnotic. And this movie easily could have fallen into dumb, manic pixie dream girl sort of territory, but it never quite does. I think it's anchored by this incredible performance from Emily Watson. And even though she is naive and has this interesting view of the world, and again, maybe could have felt like a manic pixie dream girl or something, all the characters around her treat the material and treat what's going on so seriously. And there is meant to be this clash. And I find this movie has aged incredibly well, in my opinion. I mean, I only watched it recently, like a year ago, but rewatching it, I was totally struck by how much I just didn't give a shit about any of like its issues. Not that I would call them issues, but I love the way this film looks. I love the way it's shot. I love the jarring editing. I love Emily Watson looking down the barrel of the camera over and over again. I love that the entire film feels like almost videotapes you found in like your mum's basement or something. Like this almost feels like Stellan and Emily Watson are our mummy and daddy, and we've gone upstairs and found the most weird, insane story of their love ever. I really think this movie is good. It is harrowing and there is a cruelty to it, but if you kind of stick with it, the cruelty also becomes sort of beautiful and hypnotic and confusing. And I don't know, I just think this movie is awesome. I'm also loving these posters, I will say. Like, what are these posters? These are awesome. But yeah, I actually think this might be one of my favorite roles and performances from Stellan Skarsgård, who I do think is a supremely underrated actor. But yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. I don't want to give anything away either, so I'll save it for the spoiler section. But if any of what I've just said sounds interesting to you, absolutely go watch this movie. Get back to me. Maybe you'll hate me afterwards. Maybe you'll love me afterwards. But I think it's absolutely magnificent. We are now going to get into spoilers. Leave now. Do not spoil the movie for yourself. Please leave. 3, 2, 1... spoilers. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, please consider getting a membership to this channel. For the cost of a couple dollars a month, you get access to a weekly podcast where I talk about every single show and movie I've watched in a given week. This includes stuff off streaming that I don't have time to cover on the main channel, stuff at the cinemas that I don't have time to cover on the main channel, and anything else I've watched in a given week. It's a really great way to support the channel, and you get a weekly podcast that you get to enjoy. So if you're enjoying this video, I think you'll enjoy the podcast. Thank you so much for considering, and back to the video. So the hook that I didn't want to give away, but I had told to me and made me like seek out this movie immediately, and was sort of the inspiration where I went, I think Lars Von Trier is kind of fantastic. Like not just edgelord provocateur fantastic, but there's something else going on here. I had heard the hook that a woman starts having sex with other men in order to heal her husband. Or actually, it wasn't even that. I'd heard the hook of a man becomes disabled, becomes seriously injured, is on the brink of death, and wants his wife to go sleep with other men so he can hear about it. I think I'd heard that. And I went, wait, and Lars Von Trier's make it? I was like, sign me up. I'm in my freak shit. That sounds great. What I wasn't expecting was something so beautiful and moving. And I was expecting, given Lars Von Trier's usual style or his more recent style, I was expecting something where it was more like Nymphomaniac or something, where it was a bit tongue-in-cheek and fun, and you're sort of sitting there like, whoa, crazy relationship dynamic. Not at all. Not at all, because I got so immersed in this blossoming love between them. My wife didn't know where this was going. So I was really immersed in the love story, and in the back of my head, I was like, wait, he's going to get seriously injured, and then she's going to have to sleep with other guys. And then the way that actually comes about is super interesting. The film's it doesn't over-explain much, which I really like. So Stellan Skarsgård's initial request, I've seen a bunch of different takes on why and what he meant from this. So we know that Emily Watson's character truly believes in God. We see her have these moments where she's praying to God and then does God's voice. And I think, again, please leave if you haven't seen this movie. But I think the twist of the movie is you're meant to look at her as simple, naive, borderline like dumb, and just obviously almost like psychotic in her relationship with God. She keeps this secret to an extent from Stellan. She talks to God in private. It does sound like mad lunatic ravings. But on rewatch, when you know the ending, maybe she does talk to God. Maybe she is like an angel incarnate. And I've seen people suggest that this film is misogynistic because it's getting at this idea that like a woman's job on Earth is to just, I don't know, have sex and take care of their man. And I don't know if I quite agree, because I think the thing that smooths that over is Stellan's also really beautiful gesture towards Emily Watson when he's able to, he's physically able to do that at the end as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's awful. And they really only get a proper week together. But I don't know. I wasn't sitting there being like, oh, I wish I had a woman like that. Like, I just went, what a beautiful, tragic, heartbreaking movie. But what I was going to get to is, and I really would love your ideas or thoughts. I've seen some people take it that Stellan is trying to get Emily Watson essentially off his back. All right. Stellan wants to remove himself from this earth, right? He wants to self-delete because he doesn't want to live like this. He can't have sex with her anymore. He can't do anything physical. He's a very physical guy. He works on an oil rig. He loves having sex with his wife. Like, it's a true tragedy that they can't connect that way anymore. And again, if you want to be really cynical, you can be, but I don't know. I thought this was brutally earnest and brutally honest. All right. So he's then sitting there. Now, one way you can take it is that after Emily Watson's, Bess's sister, talks to Jan and says, look, like, she's naive. She's never going to leave you, yada, yada, yada. I think he might have this moment of, I need to get her with other guys. I need to get her to look elsewhere. So then I can, like, die, all right? And she'll have someone to move on to. And then maybe he manipulates her with good intention to an extent, right? Maybe he goes like, if you do that, if you go find another guy, which he wants her to do so he can, like, remove himself from the earth, right? But he goes, if you can pair yourself with a guy, if you can get with guys, that'll literally heal me. That'll heal me. I think he's preying on her naivety, but at the same time, there's a couple other ways to read it. So that's the first reading. The second reading is that he is just being honest and he does just want to hear about it. Like, he genuinely just does want to hear about it, and it'll make him better in the sense of, like, it gives him something to, like, goon to, all right, and think about. And that's how some of the characters take it. Then the other reading you have is that he might genuinely be having either a drug-induced brain fart, right? Like, he might just be saying weird, dumb bullshit, which they do actually get at a certain point. Bess's sister, I think, says at a certain point, like, you're listening to the requests of someone who's, full of drugs and on death's door and totally out of it. Like, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's being weird and cruel and strange and a goon fiend. But at the same time, is there potential that the way Bess, Emily Watson, has been engaging with God and can actually talk to God to an extent, and again, like, up in the air, but we can't get confirmation at the end of the movie that she can, is Stellan, and is what the movie's trying to get at is there's a very fine line between delusion and insanity and genuine faith, and sort of up to who holds those beliefs, right? Is Stellan Skarsgård, when he's in this injured state, drugged out, on the brink of death, actually getting close to like a divine power the same way she has, that we find out at the end of the movie? There was a poster that actually kind of confirms this. Where is it? Love is a mighty power. All right. There are multiple conversations throughout this movie where, the doctor, the psychologist of Bess, says to her, oh, super arrogant that you think you're like this special person that can talk to God. You think you caused Jan's injury. And yeah, that's like the sadness of the movie, is that she prays that Jan can come back, knowing that, to an extent, knowing in her heart, the only way he can come back is if he gets a little injured, like a hand injury, and gets really injured. And she does see it as God kind of persecuting her for praying for something kind of self-involved, so she feels like she needs to seek retribution for that and almost try and fix that throughout the movie. But again, like, did Jan actually have a vision himself, whether it was drug-induced or schizo or whatever, whether he's having like a genuine psychotic moment? Did he have this feeling of like, I think that will actually heal me? Like, was he not speaking figuratively and genuinely was like, I actually think this will heal me more than doctor and medicine can? Or was that sort of like, this will heal me in the sense of it gives me something to like think about and fantasize about? Because I don't know about that one, because at a certain point, he can't even handle her wearing something hot because he can't touch her, right? And I would have thought, not to get in the weeds of it, right? But like, if you can't handle her wearing a dress, Surely you can't handle her telling these very sexually explicit stories. I will say, though, I feel like she either could have told the story or worn the dress and, like, you know, it's not sex, but it could have, like, gooned him off or something. Like, if it was that much of a problem for them, anyways, regardless. So this is why I think maybe Jan genuinely did believe and had a moment where he had his version of talking to God and have this religious awakening, or did just feel like, yeah, that'll make me better. Or maybe he just had a genuine weird moment where he said some dumb drug-induced bullshit. There was a mix of all these things that we're talking about, right? Maybe he just had a moment where he said this stupid, dumb, weird, strange request. But as the poster says, love is a mighty power. She believed it. She does have divine angelic connections, which are confirmed at the end of the movie. And I think, like, Stellan gets better because of her. We kind of see that, right? Like, I've seen a lot of people say he gets surgeries. I thought he rejected the surgeries. I'll need to rewatch it. But both times I've seen it, I thought he rejected the surgeries and signed away for some power for her. Maybe he then changed his mind. But he gets better insanely quickly as Bess's health deteriorates. So I did take it, at that point I was like, oh, something divine is happening. Like, you spend a lot of the movie going, the point of this movie is this naive woman thinks she can fix something that she just can't fix. In this absurd, crazy way, she's misunderstood something that Jan has said, and this is like a nightmare scenario, and it's going to be this awful commentary on delusion, right? Delusion around faith and the issue with blind faith, right? But then you start going, wait, Jan's getting better. What the fuck? And better really fast. And then after she dies, he's like on a wheelchair. And then like a shot or two later, he's like walking around on crutches and like helping steal her body. And you're like, what? And dare I say, I cried both times. And at the end of this movie, and I know Mark Kermode hates it. I know the critic Mark Kermode thinks Lars Von Trier is taking the piss and thought that the ending was fucking stupid. Dude, I cried both times. I feel like I see a miracle when I see the bells in the sky. I'm getting like choked up just saying it. Dude, I'm like thinking about this movie, and as I'm talking about it, I'm getting choked up. It is cruel. It is mean. The men in this movie, I mean, even Jan has some moments where he gets a little mean and cruel. But there's just something beautiful and transcendent about it. I love that this won the Grand Jury Prize at Cannes. No, I'm like getting choked up talking about it. Dare I say the ending of this movie with the bells has me in a state of awe the same way the ending of Space Odyssey has me, which I very rarely get, where I'm looking at something where even though I know it's a movie, I'm like, what am I beholding? And like the dialogue isn't subtle. Like they and I love that they get it because they put the audience through it too. They wake up Stellan, they wake up Jan, and they're like, look at the monitor. And he looks at the monitor and they're like, look, there's nothing there, right? And he's like, yeah. And then he goes out and he hears the bells, which they talk about the whole time of like wanting these bells. It's beautiful. And you know what? Seeing the bells makes it even better. I don't give a shit. I know some people wouldn't like that, but it brings it home. It brings it home. It's the fact that you get this sense that she's in heaven and she's watching over Jan, and you get the bells, and it's something that can't be explained. How are there bells ringing up there? Like it's so good. And look, I to go to my private school growing up, I had to be on like a substantial choir scholarship, so I did used to go to church all the time to pay for my tuition, but I wasn't particularly religious myself. I just sang in the choir. But seeing this movie really just did something, you know? And I will say I love what Lars can accomplish in stuff like Breaking the Waves and Dogville and Melancholia and Dancer in the Dark, when he's a little more sincere. I also love the other side of him that's a lot more fucking awful. I also love the behind the scenes clip of Emily Watson talking about how Stellan essentially taught her how to act on set.
Stellan Skarsgård, who was obviously my You know, we were partners in crime throughout that film, and I was so lucky that it was him. I obviously hadn't done anything at all before, and I said to him, what is screen acting? What do you do? Help. He said to me, don't aim for anything, just let go.
I think this movie is utterly breathtaking. Utterly, I just think it's fantastic. Also, for Nymphomaniac fans, I didn't realize this until I went back and watched it, because I watched Nymphomaniac. That's the same outfit that the lead in Nymphomaniac wears when she's fly fishing. Yeah, similar, or at least the same red pants. Oh, I love this movie. I love this movie so much. Love it, love it, love it. Love it. And the fact that I'm tearing up as I talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that's why it's one of my favorites. Now, after the Breaking the Waves, which had a bunch of accolades and really made people sit up and go, holy crap, Lars Von Trier is out there. He's doing crazy stuff. He's breaking the rules of filmmaking. Lars Von Trier, I guess, thought he would fuck around for a bit. He made his only proper film that works as a Dogma 95 film, which is The Idiots. Now, The Idiots, I will say, great hook, great premise. You hear the premise and you're like, who the fuck would think of that? That's amazing, you know? So the premise of The Idiots is essentially it follows a woman who discovers this group of people who pretend to have like intellectual and physical disabilities and impairments to kind of have a different experience of life. They enjoy being taken care of. They enjoy being able to like make noises and act a certain way without any repercussions and then blame it on fictional disabilities that they don't actually have. It's a great edgy sort of premise. And I will say, I think the movie almost lives up to its premise. I think the movie is very funny at the start. When you first get to know these characters and you first get to know how they work, it's pretty hilarious. But unfortunately, you kind of get the point of the movie about 30 minutes in, and then you do spend a while just kind of like waiting for something to happen. But what I will say really elevates this movie into sort of an essential Lars Von Trier movie, if you're a fan of Lars Von Trier, is the fact that I think the ending brings it back to a sort of sense of profundity. Not as much as, say, Breaking the Waves and the way that thing becomes really sort of like emotionally visceral and powerful. But at the same time, I was pretty struck by how emotionally drawn in I was by the end of The Idiots. And I will say this might be one that is worthy of a second watch for me, because I know this is one of Sean Baker's favorite films, director of Anora and Tangerine and The Florida Project. He loves this film. He's absolutely obsessed with it. So I am wondering if on multiple rewatches, I'll appreciate it more and more and more. But overall, I do think this is a really solid movie and a great entry in Lars Von Trier's career. If this is one of the worst ones he's done, it's pretty good. Now, next we have Dancer in the Dark, and I would say next to Breaking the Waves, this is Lars Von Trier's second masterpiece. This stars Björk. It follows a woman who lives in a very cruel world, a world that is very cruel to her. She's trying to save up enough money to pay for surgery to stop her child going blind. Meanwhile, she is also going blind. So it's a hereditary blindness thing. She's trying to keep it secret from her child, because if he worries about it, it will get worse. Now, I had to Google this. I was like, this feels too cruel. This feels too cosmically cruel. Lars Von Trier must have made this up, but no, apparently that is actually a thing. Now, I don't want to spoil what this movie turns into or what sort of genre this film is if you don't know. If you somehow haven't seen Dancer in the Dark, brace yourself for maybe the bleakest film ever. Like, it is very full on and very tragic, to the point where it almost feels manipulatively cruel, but it comes back around with these incredible moments of beauty and self-awareness, I'll say. But if you haven't seen the film and you think you can handle it, go and watch it and then come back to this section of the video, because I don't want to spoil what this movie is. But for those of you who have seen it, we're going to get into a spoiler section. So for those of you who haven't seen it, click to the next movie. For those of you who have seen it, stick around. I'm sorry the spoiler-free section is so short, but you're best off going into this movie knowing nothing and then coming back. So let's get into spoilers. Now, those of you who have stuck around, spoilers. So Dancer in the Dark, right? It is a musical. And I just want to say, some of these songs absolutely rip. I'm blanking on the name of like the first song number you get, but it just absolutely rips. The ooh, clash, clang, wow, wow. It's so good. It's so good. And like, it's filmed like shit, all right? But simultaneously, there's so much energy to how poorly it's filmed, and it almost wraps around to being this really inspired choice. And a lot of times that's what Lars Von Trier really gets right in this section of his career, and his kind of like second wind he has later. These like really exciting movies where you're like, this is flat out bad editing. This looks terrible, but somehow I'm getting hypnotized by how shitty it looks. He kind of aced this in Breaking the Waves, and these musical sections are simultaneously, like, they're so ugly to look at, but there's this rhythmic cutting and this sense of chaos that I absolutely love. And you've got Björk, and her voice is so, like, stretched at times, and it's doing really crazy things, and it's just not what you'd expect from a normal musical. And I think that's what makes the movie so much fun and so energetic, despite how bleak it is. This song, and I think I've seen it all, is absolutely incredible. On the soundtrack, it's Tom York from Radiohead, so that's a real treat. But even in the movie itself, I think the people that aren't very good singers singing their heart out is kind of part of the fun. You know, the actor that's doing a duet with Björk, one of the great artists of our time, he can't sing for shit, but that's kind of part of the fun. You know, it's realistic, dark, flawed characters living in a cruel, cruel world, being pulled into a musical almost against their will and being asked to sing. And there's this almost like patheticness to the song numbers that's constantly reminding you of the bleakness of the story. Now that we are in proper spoilers, that whole scene where that piece of shit guy, the thing that kicks off the plot is Björk is kind of blackmailed by this shitty guy, or he kind of like threatens her and assaults her and basically gets her to shoot him because he's such a pathetic loser. We have this scene earlier where he sneaks into her like apartment or sneaks into her house. He just kind of like stands there and pretends he's left when he hasn't. And even Björk, despite being blind, is like, are you still there? And he's just kind of standing there. And there's this weird dark sense of humor in that scene, but then you watch him take the money and you're like, you piece of poo-poo. And he knows what the money is for. Like, he sucks, all right? And the reason he owes money is because he keeps buying his like wife handbags. The whole setup is so darkly mean-spirited that it almost wraps back around to being slightly funny until the actual plot kicks in. Like, up until then, I was kind of chuckling along, being like, yo, get a load of this guy. But then he gets her to shoot him and then lets her like take the fall, and the wife is like, oh my god, what the hell is going on? And you enter this plot where she's essentially put on trial and potentially being sentenced to death for basically being forced to shoot this guy. It's an insane setup, but again, that's where the movie kind of pulls you in, is as you're watching these like song numbers that are just so sad and so interesting, and you learn about this character, and she's got such a sweet outlook, and you just wish you could go back to the start of the movie where she was just singing in her musicals and working at the factories and appreciating the simple things in life, and you're watching her like fall deeper and deeper into this awful situation, and she's making all these choices that ruin her life to help her son. Now, I will say, despite me thinking this is basically a 10 out of 10, like spiritually for me, this is like a 5 out of 5. I think this is like an amazing movie. At the same time, the reason it's the lowest 5 of 5 for me out of Lars Von Trier's movies, and we'll get to the ranking at the end of the video, but the reason it is probably because I just don't emotionally connect with the son at all. As a concept, as what he represents to Selma, absolutely, you know, like, oh my god, what a great mother, what a wonderful woman, what a selfless person who's been persecuted by the world for just trying to help people, you know. But at the same time, the combination of the clunky performance of the son and the lack of development of him, it's something where it's like, it is still a 5 out of 5 movie for me, but it's a little note I have. And at the same time, I do think the movie could be tightened up in parts, but in saying that, like, this is pretty much as good as it gets. Like, I 100% respect this winning the Palme d'Or. I think there are a couple other Lars Von Trier movies that could have won it as well, but this is like kind of must-watch, fucked up cinema bro movie sort of thing. Like, this is a movie, you know? And again, Björk is just fantastic in this movie, like absolutely wonderful. This truly is one of those movies you kind of have to see before you die, just because it's so out there and like, what the hell am I witnessing? All right, so after Dancer in the Dark, which won Lars Von Trier the Palme d'Or, which was sort of, it's interesting looking back, going through Lars Von Trier's career, right? Because he's kind of known now as this provocateur, this edgelord, and it's sort of like a lot of people really don't like him. But for a while, he had this era where like he was kind of a critical art house darling. And I think he was really hitting his stride between Dancer in the Dark and Dogville. I think these movies, they almost don't really need a massive amount of defending. They're just really well-made, well-told films that have things that could be gimmicks, all right? Like in Dancer in the Dark, you've got the whole musical in disguise sort of thing. And in Dogville, you've got this whole Brechtian sort of style where you don't have any walls. It's shot on a soundstage and they're just pretending the buildings exist. But this movie thrives. This movie thrives because of its gimmick. I will say this is a movie that goes for 3 hours. You have Nicole Kidman in one of her best roles. And I will say Nicole Kidman, if you go looking through her career, has about 7 or 8 holy shit movies. You know, like I think she's known as like Hollywood royalty, but she's not out here like Tom Hanks just doing boring role after boring role. She is like doing crazy shit pretty consistently if you go through her career. But this film, it follows the story of Grace, who is on the run. Initially at the start, we kind of have the impression that she's on the run from some dangerous men and she chooses to hide in Dogville. And a character called Tom, played by Paul Bettany, chooses to kind of root for her and kind of advocate for her to the rest of the town, basically saying, give her a chance, let her stay here, let her work here, you know, she might be good for the town. And you're kind of following as she tries to ingratiate herself into the town and tries to keep the loyalty of the town. She obviously doesn't want them to dob her into the people that were chasing her. And in a way, this movie is all about sort of this make it in America sort of idea, right? This American dream for immigrants to an extent, this American dream for outsiders. I will say the credits play a slideshow that starts with kind of disenfranchised poor people and then slowly pivots to a focus on African American people. And I do think what Lars Von Trier was trying to do with this American trilogy, I think it was called, which was meant to be Dogville and then Manderlay and then the follow-up film, I think he was trying to sort of critique the American dream compared to the actual American reality for outsiders. Regardless, though, this movie also just works as almost like this fable, this dark fairy tale. Sometimes it operates on, I wouldn't say dream logic, but there are these weird absurdist moments that happen in this movie, but they land fully earnestly. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, I should be yelling at the screen being like, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Most notably, there's sort of a device that's introduced in the back end of the movie where you're like, when would this have happened? It's almost testing your ability to stay immersed in the story, but that's the thing. The movie is just utterly hypnotic. It's a 3-hour film that feels like it goes for about maybe 90 minutes. Maybe 2 hours. But honestly, the choice to include these chapters, and the chapter titles basically give like a Wikipedia plot summary of what you're about to watch, in a weird way kind of keeps you going. Like, the chapter names will literally be something like, Grace tries to make friends with this person, but then this person decides to fuck her over and blah, 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 right? Like, it'll be like a long run-on sentence where you're like, oh, well, what does that look like? So it kind of keeps you going through these 30-minute sections. I think this is Lars Von Trier using the chapter system the best, and he kind of loves that. He's an absolute slut for chapters in his movies, but I think the film absolutely sings because of the way the film is broken up. There's a clear sort of 90-minute rise and then sort of a 90-minute deconstruction of the American dream, or a 90-minute section where you're like, oh, this is getting a little tough and a little thorny. And I think all the characterization is really good. On one end, pretty much every single person in the town functions as a almost conglomerate. Like, the town itself is a character. The people of the town you could almost view as one big gloop, because they're all a bunch of sheep. They're all a bunch of idiots. They very much engage in mob mentality, but at the same time, even though you can kind of paint the people and the town of Dogville as one entity, either working with or against Grace, at the same time, Lars does a really good job. I'd say some of his best writing. Lars does a real good job of defining and carving out a few specific characters. Most notably, Thomas Edison Jr., played by Paul Bettany. Oh my god, fucking twat, man. And really like an interesting, complex character, and he's kind of twattish from the start. Like, there's just something smug and insincere, and he's kind of doing the right thing, but he's one of the best depictions of sort of nice guy syndrome I've seen in a film, where it's like he is doing kind things, but you kind of just feel like you're sort of sitting there the whole movie being like, all right, if Grace didn't look as beautiful as Nicole Kidman, would you be as keen to help her? Serious question, you know? And you kind of watch throughout the movie as you're sort of questioning what his motives are. And then there are other people that are more flat out, easier to read. You've got a character played by Stellan Skarsgård to utter perfection, who every time he's on screen, it's so hypnotic. And I always find the Skarsgårds, Alexander Skarsgård as well, and Bill, they all bring this like funny, sarcastic energy to the roles. And I think this is a great combination of bringing Stellan Skarsgård's cheeky wit into a flat-out diabolical character. You also have a few kind of familiar faces. You've got this guy showing up from The Godfather at a certain point. I won't spoil who. You've also got a few character actors you've seen around that are all giving great performances. On top of that, Chloe Sevigny, another actress I think is utterly slept on. She's fantastic in this. She really seemed to love working with Lars Von Trier, which is nice to hear. Nicole Kidman, on the other hand, is proud of the work they did. Really, actually, she talked recently. She actually defended Lars fairly recently, but she did find it a difficult place on set. And I will say, if you watch the Making of Dogville documentary, there is some hilarious stuff. Lars Von Trier and Paul Bettany were absolutely beefing. And it's interesting because it almost reminds you of arguments with your family or arguments with your co-workers where you're just both at your wits' ends. But
yeah, I'm just furious at you
for making you stay. 3 tiny smiles, it would have been perfect.
But there were times when I was smiling and you weren't on me. You know, I can't.
No. You paid, aren't you? Not very well.
Not very well. Where's that?
This was a compliment, for Christ's sake.
No, I agree. I'm just discussing with you.
You shouldn't discuss anything with you. Just say, thank you, Mr. Director. I'm glad you liked my performance.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. I'm glad you liked my performance.
Okay.
yeah, this film is fantastic. I'm saving the ranking of all these films towards the end, but I do just want to stress there's about 5 or 6 Lars Von Trier films that I have at like basically perfect status. And this is one of them. I think this is one of his undeniable films. You know, there are some films of Lars where even though I think they're perfect, I can see people getting pushed away, and I wouldn't really like argue them on that. You know, I'd be like, yeah, sure, like maybe it's not for everyone. This, on the other hand, if I heard someone say this is a piece of shit or boring or not very good, I would like 10 toes down it. I would actually like push back on them. I think it's got a lot to say about how women are treated. It has a lot to say about kind of mob mentality, the inherent sort of nature of humanity, and the way we are sort of inherently self-serving. Now, these are sort of philosophical musings you can agree with or disagree with, but they are utterly compelling in this film. And I also think the writing here is some of Lars's best. There's a really brilliant way this movie will, you know, have a character say one thing, but it's communicating something else entirely. And sort of the montages that are used here and watching Grace work her way up are just all really well done. So absolutely go check this out. Now we're going to get into a spoiler section of the movie for those of you who have seen it. So skip to the next timestamp for the next movie because I don't want this movie spoiled for you. Leave now. 3, 2, 1. All right, so on rewatch, knowing that she's not actually, I mean, she still is running from those men, but knowing she is actually the gangster's daughter, and rewatching this movie, you almost have this like a Begonia feeling, right? She does have some power that is kind of seen in the background, right? She does, you know, they don't know who she is quite as well as they should. Well, sorry, they don't know who she really is, all right? So she's intentionally presenting herself as very meek and very lowly, and you know, I'm not saying she's doing a bad thing here, but at the same time, like, it is interesting that on rewatch, this film almost feels like a test its entire runtime. You know, it's sort of this interesting thing where, you know, Paul Bettany very selfishly chooses to call the gangsters. Now, it ends up being that the gangsters actually serve Grace, but Paul Bettany, as far as he knew, and I think that's it, it's the principle of it, right? Paul Bettany, as far as he knew, was fucking over Grace. All right, completely. And he was fucking over Grace because after being assaulted sexually over and over and over again by all of the townsmen, he can't handle the fact that she doesn't want to have sex with him after like doing labor all day, right? So he gets so butthurt that he's like, actually, fuck it. I'm going to dob on you. I'm going to call these people that are after you. All right, I'm not even going to call the police. I'm going to call the people that are after you, which is an awful thing to do. And I read discussions online of people being like, oh, you know, it's really interesting that she chooses to shoot Paul Bettany's character herself. You know, like other people did way worse stuff. And I'm like, that's actually not that clear cut. Yes, also the assaults she goes through are utterly terrible and gross, but at least there was never sort of a clear friendship with those people that you feel like is being betrayed. On the other hand, Paul Bettany does something just as insidious, which is basically, yeah, it's similar levels, right? Like, have sex with me or I dob you in, which is something we've seen throughout the movie from these other guys. So he basically does the same thing. He just follows through on the dobbing her in thing. Gross. And yeah, it's covert contract, right? It's not flat out like SA, but at the same time, super gross. So as it stands, he thinks he's messing her over, right? Turns out the people that come are actually related to her. She's in a position of power. She's part of them. She just wants to leave them behind, be a more virtuous, lowly person or whatever. It's kind of shady on what initially happened, but they had a falling out. I love the scene between Nicole Kidman and her father just arguing like father and daughter, and the whole town's people's lives are at stake, but they're having this petty squabble. And I just love it. It's this choice to be like, nah, fuck them. And she remembers everything they did to them. Most notably, obviously that scene, pretty heartbreaking scene where that woman smashes the dolls. So yeah, Nicole Kidman. And what's interesting is that woman doesn't believe that Stellan Skarsgård assaulted Nicole Kidman, but even so, it takes two to tango, right? And for her to sit there, even with what she believes, which is that it was a consensual affair and Nicole Kidman had sex with Stellan, it's like, your husband still is mostly he's the one cheating on you. So it's so cruel. Either way you slice it. So her being like, all right, kill all her kids. And if she cries, kill more of them. Lars Von Trier, he does go full edgelord mode for a second. There's a shot where a baby gets shot in the face. Off screen, to be fair. It's simultaneously, it's Lars being a bit edgy, but also then going, okay, I do want to win the Palme d'Or again. I do think, as much as I love Elephant from Gus Van Sant, the Sands of Time, I think, demand that this should have won the Palme d'Or. Elephant is great. This is even better. But in saying that, I just think the characterization of Paul Bettany is so good. I think there is some Lars Von Trier self-critique, self-loathing inserted into this character. He's so pretentious. There's literally a point where Grace is about to kill this guy, and he's so, delusional. He's just sitting there oh, I'm thinking of my book. Maybe I should call it Dogville, or maybe a character will be named after you. What do you think of that, Grace? The whole movie, he keeps going off. There's a moment where Grace literally says, I love you, and he goes, I love you too, or whatever. And then he, asks her to leave. He totally fumbles the bag. There are points where it feels like Grace is actually into him, but he's so self-absorbed and in his own head about his art. He's just a pretentious knob. But again, more importantly, he's this fake sweet guy. There are so many points where he could have helped Grace out. And yes, to be fair, he does take some money and try to get her out of the town. That was an objective good from Paul Bettany's character. But the choice afterwards to, at the very least, not say, look, Dad, I stole the money. I want to get Grace out of here. He chokes. He doesn't admit that. He lets Grace take the fall. She then gets chained up and assaulted over and over and over and over again. And I think it's an important note. I don't think it's a good thing that Paul Bettany's character is there's a line of narration, and the narration is acting very omniscient. It clearly has insight into the internal machinations of these characters, the internal emotional logic of these characters. But at the same time, there's a bit of sarcastic, smug wit critiquing these characters. But there is a line from the narration that says, he was particularly fazed or particularly unsettled by the sexual-based assaults, right? That he was particularly disturbed by those. And I personally think, given how the ending goes, given the fact that when she rejects him, that is the point where he decides to turn her over, I think you're meant to instead take it that he is kind of jealous, or sort of that was meant to be my girl. That was meant to be my woman. I brought her to this town. I was shepherding her around. I was her representative. This is bullshit. If anyone should be sleeping with her, it should be me. I don't think he was particularly unsettled in the sense of oh my God, her body is being violated. You know what I mean? The way he should be. So yeah, I think he's a piece of shit character. And I think he is meant to mirror Stellan Skarsgård's character a bit in Nymphomaniac. But I don't want to get into that too much because I don't want to spoil Nymphomaniac. But there's a naivety of thinking he understands women, thinking he is the ultimate feminist hoorah. And I think there is some sort of Lars Von Trier self-insert, self-critique, especially after how apparently the set was on Dancer in the Dark with Björk. You kind of see that a fair bit. There are almost these moments of poetry, even when Stellan kind of inappropriately touched Nicole Kidman while they were picking apples. You can kind of picture that exchange being similar to how it may have gone down between Lars and Björk similarly. So really interesting movie. utterly compelling. And I mean, it's the most obvious scene to point to, but that scene where she is being assaulted and violated by Stellan Skarsgård's character, and everyone's kind of like doing their own thing, but you can see through their walls, and it's like this really great visualization of how this stuff is essentially happening in plain sight, whether there were walls or not. It's the gimmick working fully. And that's why, to me, it doesn't feel like a gimmick. I think the movie, yeah, it's paced relentlessly well. I also love, I think it's like the midway point where things start to take a turn. You open chapter 3 or chapter 4 with that boy begging to be spanked. And I love that that is Stellan Skarsgård's son, because the way he gets her to spank him is similar to how Stellan gets her, or like violates her, right? This whole sort of like pressure, coercion. I will say hilarious scene with the boy being like, spank me harder. So good. The film has a few laughs. There's this great moment where they're at like dinner or lunch for Independence Day, is it? Like the American July 4th. On July 4th, they're seen at like a table, and someone comes up, is like, I can hear cars coming. You need to go. And the whole movie, they've been ringing the bells to let people know, but now they're all at the table. So someone's like, I can hear cars coming. Grace hears this. And then she goes, should I ring the bell? And then Paul Bettany's like, no, I think she heard you. Really funny. But yeah, this movie's got a great sense of wit, tragedy. The way every single moment you think she's going to get out or something is going to go well for her, she's fucked over. I mean, even the guy that agrees to get her out of town just sucks. And it makes the ending utterly cathartic. I think the stroke of genius of this film is Lars somehow getting you on board with shooting a bunch of children in the face. Like at the end, you're like, fuck this town. And like, I know they're kids, but at the same time, like if my kid was like celebrating a woman getting assaulted over and over and over again, I don't know. Like would I shoot my kid? No, but I'd be like, he needs to be checked in somewhere, and I don't know, maybe a lobotomy or something. Like, what the hell's going on? But yeah, I love this movie. I think it is pretty much perfect. I think it is perfect. And Nicole Kidman is so good in this movie. So is Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany is really good and plays the character with a lot of nuance and a lot of like occasionally likable, but on rewatch, just ultimately pathetic its entire runtime. And I love how the dad of Grace is simultaneously shocked at some of her ideas. Like when she goes, oh, kill some of her kids, and then if like she starts crying, kill more of them. You can see even he's like, holy fuck. And then he's like, what have they done to you? They've like taken your good nature away. This is bullshit. I will say I was open, like when I watched Manderlay, it was a couple months after Dogville, and I was engaging with it with an open mind, and I did ultimately enjoy that movie a fair bit. But I will say, after watching Dogville again, should have left it, or the sequel should have been a spiritual sequel with different characters. It's just, this one's too good. This one's way too good. It's just too good. Anyways, moving on. Next movie. All right, next we have Manderlay. This is a sequel to Dogville, a movie that probably didn't need a sequel. And also the issue is when you watch Dogville for the first time, it's such a like, where the hell is this going sort of movie. And obviously the existence of Manderlay and following the same character at the very least tells us that the character of Dogville survived, which I think is a bit of a bummer. But in saying that, Manderlay is good. It's actually really quite good. It probably shouldn't exist. I don't think Dogville needed a sequel, and I kind of wish this was a sequel in the sense of like a spiritual sequel. I wish this was like a different character. It's like we're taking that same idea with the kind of like chalky sets and like nothing's really there, and it's all just like pretending doors are there and pretending buildings are there. Like I would have minded if they took that setup with different characters and still did the whole thing of we're exploring different towns that represent different parts of American history and different parts of American oppression. That's all fine, but I do think it's really a tall ask when you're changing the cast of multiple people and reusing people from Dogville. You know, you have people showing up from Dogville in Manderlay playing different roles, but on top of that, Nicole Kidman is now played by Bryce Dallas Howard. Her father in the movie is now played by Willem Dafoe, and I love all these actors and actresses, but it is kind of distracting, and to me it never fully feels like an actual sequel. It just doesn't. I'm having to constantly remind myself this is a sequel to Dogville. Bryce Dallas Howard is Nicole Kidman. It just doesn't ever land properly, which is a shame because as a movie itself, it's actually pretty good. I would almost suggest the way you engage with it is Dogville is a standalone movie and Manderlay is a standalone movie, because Lars Von Trier in his writing in this film almost treats it as such. If the first film was about sort of how this woman was oppressed and treated and exploited, and almost a commentary on capitalism in general, if you want to view Grace as a character as sort of a vehicle for that, in Manderlay it becomes a story about racism. It follows Grace as she arrives at the town of Manderlay, which is still practicing slavery despite it being abolished ages ago, and it kind of follows her trying to free these slaves, and it's sort of this like fucked up subversion of the white savior trope where things don't go the way you would hope, things don't go the way she would want, trying to help these people liberate themselves. And I will say there's some really great moments of writing here, there's some really great performances here. It also really struggles with pace at times, you know. Dogville was a 3-hour movie that felt like maybe 90 minutes, and this one, it does feel a lot longer than its runtime. But in saying that, the moment it starts to lose you with its pacing, you'll have a sequence where you're like, that was amazing. So it's a mixed bag. It's probably at like a 7 out of 10 for me, and there's so much working against this movie that it's almost a miracle that despite all of that, it actually comes out to being pretty good. It's actually pretty good. Do I think it should exist? No, I kind of wish it was like a video I found on YouTube of like a demo. It almost feels like a demo, you know. Dogville feels like a proper sort of, this could have won the Palme d'Or, why wasn't this nominated for Oscars sort of movie. Whereas Manderlay, it's just kind of like, oh, that exists. I don't know anyone that's seen it. I don't know anyone that talks about it, but there is some really good stuff here. And it's really unfortunate that it's living in the shadow of such a perfect movie like Dogville, you know. But it is really good. It is really good. Next, after Manderlay and right before Lars gets into his like modern freak era, which he's probably most well known for, we have The Boss of It All. Now, The Boss of It All is a pretty decent comedic setup. It almost reminds me of like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. The setup here is basically that this boss of a company has been pretending to be a fellow employee, and he's been saying, oh, the actual boss is like over there somewhere. He like Skypes in and sends emails. So essentially the actual boss of the company is pretending not to be the boss, and he's acting like the boss is over in like another country or something. So now he needs to hire an actor to actually play the boss. So he hires this pretentious actor, who is our main character, to essentially just pretend to be the boss of this company. And what should have been an easy job, the pretentious actor starts kind of method acting and starts getting really involved in the role and like trying to have debates and like defend himself. And the actual boss keeps going like, stop trying to defend yourself, just answer the questions and get out. Like, you're just a scapegoat for me. And he keeps going like, no, I don't think my character would say that. It is quite a funny setup. And there are some really funny things in this movie. Notably, there's like a sexual escapade halfway through this movie that actually had me like spit out my drink. There's some really funny stuff in this movie. Unfortunately, it's just another thing where despite it being a 90-something minute movie, I just feel like you could have cut 10, 20 minutes. Like, there were points where I was like, let's move it. Like, I'm not laughing and I'm not super interested. Come on. But in saying that, I think this is kind of all right. Is it what I want from Lars Von Trier? No, and I would probably cut this and Manderlay and a lot of his almost amazing movies just so he could have a tighter, more perfect filmography. But in saying that, for what it is, it's not bad. There's this really interesting method he uses in this movie called Automavision, which is apparently some like computer program, some automated computer thing was picking the cuts and the angles and the cropping and controlling the camera. So you gain some, like, even for Lars, some just crazy framing, some completely baffling shot choices, but sometimes it's funny, but it's like, that's almost a funny punchline in itself if you know that gimmick going into the movie. But if you don't know that gimmick going into the movie, even for Lars, you'd probably be seen there being like, what the hell is going on? A moment I actually like, it almost reminds me of the scrappiness usually music artists have. You know, when musical artists, I don't know, Brockhampton or something, they'll release like a demo album and maybe they'll be talking on it for a bit, or maybe you'll hear sort of the metronome in the background. There's this free, loose nature to it of like, if the music bumps, the music bumps. Lars kind of takes this approach with The Boss of It All. So the opening just has Lars filming himself in the crane that they would use for a film, which obviously you wouldn't normally see. And he's in the window. He's like, yo, 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 I'm Lars. This is my movie. Like as if it's like Johnny Knoxville from Jackass, but then he expects us to be immersed in a scripted film. And that, like, I haven't really seen too much stuff like that before. I'm like, damn, this is crazy. Like, remember Luca Guadagnino did that at the end of After the Hunt, and people are like, what does that mean? Lars Von Trier just kind of does it here and fucks around, and then occasionally he'll come back in the middle of the movie and be like, so we're going over here now because the story follows this. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, like, it's a movie that if you're a massive Lars Von Trier head, interesting to watch, but nowhere near his essentials. I don't think anyone would ever make the case for this being an essential watch. But, you know, it is what it is. It's not terrible. So when I was doing research for Antichrist, watched the movie, looking for interpretations, I stumbled across Mark Kermode, one of my favorite critics. I listened to everything he said about the movie because he seems to be a fan about it, right? And I stumbled across his Willem Dafoe interview where they had a disagreement. Now, just so you know, I think Mark Kermode is right when he says the film is about misogyny, and Willem Dafoe disagrees. But what makes me laugh is every single other time Mark Kermode has talked about this movie, he's trying to like win the argument. And again, I think Mark Kermode is right, but watching him over 10 to 15 years bring up this little 20-second disagreement every time, to me, is hilarious. So I thought I would show all the examples here.
And it's about misogyny, very, very openly about misogyny.
I don't agree.
You don't think it's about misogyny? I didn't say it's misogynist. I said it's about misogyny.
I think it deals with, you know, a certain kind of tension between the sexes, but I'm not sure it's about misogyny.
I think one of the things it is about misogyny.
For you, fine. You know, I think a movie like this is going to mean different things to different people. It's that complex. It's that rich.
You'll also remember that Willem Dafoe said he didn't think, as I did, that it's a film about misogyny. It's clearly a film about misogyny. It doesn't matter what Willem says. It doesn't make any difference. Trust the tale, the tale, not the teller. It doesn't matter whether you're in a film, doesn't mean you understand it. What Antichrist adds up to is a matter for debate. When I interviewed the filmmakers, Dafoe claimed that Von Trier had been sick with depression throughout the shoot, but denied that the film was about misogyny. This despite the contradictory and typically provocative proclamations of the director himself. And I was on air on the Simon Mayo show with Willem Dafoe, and he and I had a disagreement about what the film was about. I said it was about misogyny. He said he disagreed. I said, that's fine. You just made the film. I watched it.
We also had a lively exchange about what the film was really about, a subject on which we politely agreed to differ.
Right, so now we get on to Antichrist, and Antichrist is really interesting, right? Because Lars started his career kind of finding his footing, and then he had a bunch of movies that were known as really good artsy movies, but also put the female characters through quite a bit. Then he kind of fell off a little with Manderlay and then Boss of It All slightly. They're not bad, but definitely no masterpieces. And then he comes back with Antichrist, right? Which is super hard going. Its reputation almost precedes it in terms of what is in this film, in terms of its explicit content. You know, I was someone who growing up, I used to get really excited when I saw the IMDb rating was like, you know, 40 out of 40 or 38 out of 40. I'd be like, oh my God, what's in this movie? And Antichrist was always one of the most intense movies. Its visuals, like its posters, were absolutely amazing. This was, in Australia, this was like the main poster for the Blu-rays and DVDs, this like scissor one here. Crazy, with Willem Dafoe on one side of the scissors and Charlotte Gainsbourg on the other side of the scissors. If you know why they're scissors, super full on. But even this poster, which was one of the leading ones, I think this poster is incredible. All right. So for those of you who don't know what Antichrist is about, Antichrist follows the story of Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg. They are a couple. Notably, they are pretty much the only two characters in the movie with faces. They don't talk to anyone else. The entire movie is just Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg and some animals they encounter in the woods while they are grieving and trying to get over the loss of their child. All right. Willem Dafoe is a therapist, and he goes, I don't trust your actual therapist. You're going to come with me out to the woods and we're going to do therapy together. And I will say, I think Ari Aster and a lot of the new wave, new age horror we get nowadays owes a fair bit to Antichrist. I could not believe rewatching this in 2026 how much sort of elevated modern horror tropes are in this thing. I think what's interesting about Antichrist is it's this weird mix of an easy watch for Lars Von Trier in terms of the fact that it's kind of like light on its feet. It's less than 2 hours. I think it's like an hour 45. It moves fairly quickly. It's bringing in elements of witchcraft, elements of nature, allegories around religion. It's also a meditation on grief and loss, which is all stuff we're kind of used to nowadays. The thing is, it's intense as fuck. It is really, really full on. And I know its reputation kind of precedes it, but this is like a hell of a movie, you know? At the same time, though, it is completely stunning. I do think Ari Aster owes a fair bit to this movie in terms of like taking a horrific incident at a certain point to do with loss and then kind of like stretching the characters in it and putting them through the emotional ringer. There are shots in this movie that are absolutely life-changing. I mean, you can see some of them here. I love this one with Willem Dafoe and the rocks falling down. I love these posters. This movie is sort of this like psychosexual, horrific movie where it is exploring themes of gender, internalized misogyny, externalized misogyny. Like there's a lot going on in this movie. And at the same time, it could feel like a total mess. There are points where it feels like the movie doesn't quite know what it's trying to say at certain points, but I think that's part of the fun of the movie is how many ideas it's kind of throwing and how much it puts you through, and it never feels like it's just lazily thrown in there. Maybe Lars Von Trier, some of this stuff just came to him and he didn't fully connect the dots, but you can see a lot of linking tissue. There's some really striking visuals in this, some wonderful cinematography. I mean, all of the shots of these hands floating around. This, again, is just like amazing. But I think what I love about this film is how committed these actors are. Charlotte Gainsbourg won Best Actress at Cannes, and Willem Dafoe gives a wonderfully committed performance. And there's something about this movie, man. It's crazy, it's full on, it's mean-spirited, it's nasty, but at the same time, there's something weirdly beautiful and weirdly sort of like refined about this movie compared to some of other Lars's films. I find the editing a lot less jarring. I think this is it's such a strange movie because on a narrative level, it's fairly conventional minus one or two things, but it's just so thematically and content-wise intense. There's a really fantastic movie waiting for you if you can handle it. But again, big emphasis on if you can handle it. All right, so skip to the next movie if you don't want spoilers for Antichrist. Now we're going to talk about some loose things I appreciate about the plot, some nice thematic stuff I like, and just stuff I found interesting. I think there is a lot in this movie about how women are viewed, kind of internalized misogyny, how religion looks at women and how the dangers of what happens if this is internalized. I think there's a really interesting story here in Charlotte Gainsbourg's character, right? And I think this movie is going for somewhat of an allegory of kind of like the battle of the sexes to an extent, or this story about man's nature versus woman's nature and their place in nature in general, but also just like the kind of like rough texture, the grit, kind of like the friction between the genders, like this thing where we both kind of need each other. They both kind of need each other, but they work against one another. You know, you watch as Willem Dafoe's character is trying to handle something with 100% pure logic and facts and reason, and Charlotte Gainsbourg's character is on the entire other end, and like the nature of these two and the way they act. And it feels like Willem Dafoe's arc on this movie is kind of relinquishing control and kind of having this eye-opening moment of, I can't control her the same way I can't control nature, the same way I can't control emotions and grief, and these things just need to wash over you. It almost feels like a companion piece in that way with Melancholia, and it feels like the moment where Willem Dafoe's character is almost getting all these signs that initially he's trying to avoid and ignore while he's in the woods, while he's in Eden. These things are coming up basically being like, the only way you can handle this is like giving in to your primal urges and killing this woman. She's going to get you otherwise. And there's this moment where the three beggars line up and he just goes, all right, I've seen the signs, I'm going for it. It is messy in its messaging, but at the same time there's like such interesting stuff going on here. I find it so interesting, and I've always been perplexed and baffled by the ending, right? Like, Willem Dafoe, what feels like simultaneously a thing of just pure survival, but also it does feel like he's looking at the three beggars and going, whatever hellscape we're in, I'm taking the signs and I'm doing it. So he takes out Charlotte Gainsbourg, right? And then at the end of the movie, he's sitting there in this like hill and watches as all these women rise, but they're also coming from the top of the hill as well. It's this really striking, haunting visual. I saw this movie when I was very young. That visual's always stuck around because I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Initially, I was like, okay, it's as simple as he's killed the woman in nature and now these spirits are free. And are they going to attack him? But then, you know, multiple times of rewatching this movie and multiple times of watching this scene again, he doesn't seem quite in fear. He seems almost like shocked and confused by what he's seen. And similarly, they're not just walking up towards him. There are some walking past him. They're coming from both directions. It's almost like he's invisible to them. I can't tell if it's this thing of he's freed the spirits by taking out Charlotte Gainsbourg. I mean, what does that mean? Or if it is as simple as he's killed this woman, but he's going to see women in general this way as a threat for the rest of his life, or he's going to see Charlotte Gainsbourg and any other woman or see her throughout the world. Like, it's confusing. I need to watch it more recently to have a more clear, concise analysis, but it's a really interesting moment where it's like, what it's such striking visual imagery. What are you getting at here? And it definitely does, when all these women are walking up and down the hill at the end, these faceless women, it is meant to call back that visual earlier of when they're having sex on the woods and all the hands were falling apart, which is an absolutely amazing shot. I also think the story in this movie is fairly compelling, right? I will say, I think it's important to note that Charlotte Gainsbourg's character didn't just go nuts when she got taken to the woods. I think a really maybe initial reading you'll have is like, oh, Willem Dafoe made a massive mistake by bringing her out to the woods, and I do think that was a mistake. But at the same time, I don't think that's meant to be a reframed memory or anything. I think Charlotte Gainsbourg's character saw the baby was about to fall out of the thing and let it happen. And yeah, part of it was because she was enjoying sex, all right? So that's why she thinks, okay, I'll remove, you know, she'll do the thing with the scissors that she does later in the movie. But at the same time, I think there is that aspect of maybe she was enjoying reverting back to just like, this was what it was like when I first met Willem Dafoe, this passionate, crazy sex. I don't want to be the mother. It's nature's calling, but it doesn't feel like my nature. We see that we see at the start that the baby monitor is actually on mute. We also find out that she knows that the baby was escaping from the crib earlier, and we also see later in the movie that she'd also been putting shoes on the wrong feet for the baby. So it's like she'd almost been getting it to walk funny, causing it severe pain, like causing serious abnormalities. You know, the doctors actually confirmed that there were deformities in the feet that she'd been causing. So it's like on an instinctual level, she didn't want this child. It's a really horrifying idea, and she'd been doing that before she came to Eden. So on one end, you can read the movie as Charlotte Gainsbourg is, you know, reading through this literature for her thesis, and it's meant to be a critique of genocide. It's meant to be a critique of misogyny and genocide, right? It's meant to be a critique. Her thesis is meant to be pushing back on these ideas. And yeah, initially you could read it as while she's doing research, she gets indoctrinated by it. But I almost do wonder if she already had these urges. She knew what she'd done. She knew it was evil. And there was almost this level of self-loathing where she wanted this research it was almost like confirmation bias. Like, did she go into it wanting to confirm what she already believed about herself and believed about women and believed about this internal nature and this internal calling she had? You know, it's at the end of the day, it's same, you know, like either way, she goes to Eden, she reads more of it, it intensifies, she goes nuts, she takes out Willem Dafoe, or she tries to, she thinks they're both wrong for their sexual urges, she bashes him, she mutilates herself, all of that stuff happens. But I don't know, this movie's intense, it's extreme, but I think especially watching the special features on the Blu-ray, it seems like Lars really was trying to reckon with the way women are viewed in history, the way women have been constantly demonized, and almost lean into that in a visceral portrayal. On one end, he's showing a movie of the dangers of believing these things, you know, the dangers of this rhetoric and what it can lead to, but at the same time he's almost playfully leaning into like, okay, well, this is the evil of woman, look at it, you know. And again, I don't think it's as simple as Lars Von Trier as being a flat out misogynist. Like, him putting the symbol for woman in the title Antichrist isn't him just going like, oh yeah, women are the devil, am I right, and like leave it at that. I think he's reckoning it's something more complex and more profound, and this like corrosion of one another that these people inevitably get into. And I think there is meant to be this fable-like quality with the fact that none of the other characters have faces. I think there is meant to be this sort of idea of, what if Adam and Eve went the other direction? What if it turned into self-hatred instead of this lust and this love they had for one another? Like what happens when we are stripped bare and try and compete with nature and really reckon with these things? So yeah, it's a weird, wild, wacky, angry movie. It's an angry, sadistic, strange movie, but I kind of love it, and I think it's really, really good. I love the three beggars. I love the visuals. I just kind of love all of it. It's a tough watch, very tough watch. Like, at multiple points, you'll be sitting there like, oh man, but at the same time, it's real good. All right, next, let's talk about Melancholia. Now, this is another movie. I think Lars could have had his like second or third Palme d'Or. Now, I think him then going on to make the Nazi comments was a regrettable choice. But in saying that, Kirsten Dunst still managed to score Best Actress for this, and rightfully so. What I like about this film is, despite Lars Von Trier's kind of provocateur reputation, his controversial nature, a lot of people that aren't even Lars Von Trier fans kind of just look at this film and go, yeah, this is probably one of the best portrayals of depression ever. What I like about Lars Von Trier is he's as subtle as a brick to the teeth. He's not subtle, but there is no attempt to be subtle. He never acts like he's being clever. He never acts like he's being... he makes fun of himself consistently, even referring to kind of himself or the parody of himself as Mr. Sophistication in The House That Jack Built. Like, he knows he can be a bit pretentious, a bit artsy-fartsy, so it almost dissipates that annoyance you would normally get. The reason I say this is the central plot of Melancholia is a woman is depressed on her wedding day, which is meant to be the happiest day of someone's life, right? And she is depressed. She's seriously depressed. On top of that, there is a planet that is literally called Melancholia that either might be colliding with the planet or it might pass by the planet, right? It might pass by Earth. So right now, there's a couple people that are like, oh my God, what if this random planet hits us? Other people are going, no, don't even think that. It'll just wash over you. It'll just pass by. This is a very unsubtle, obvious metaphor for the way when you are seriously depressed, it feels like the end of the world, and everyone comes up to you and says, nah, just go for a walk, just have a shower. It'll pass. It'll pass. That's not subtle. All right. So throughout the movie, right, everyone keeps coming up being like, the planet will pass. Your depression will pass. And it's like, it's so unsubtle that it wraps back around to just being such a good, blunt exploration of depression. It captures that feeling of like when you're depressed, and I will say, I don't want to get too like woe is me, but I've had some serious like bouts of like depression in my life. And I totally get what this movie is going for. That feeling of thinking everyone's kind of against you and everyone kind of doesn't understand the way you're seeing things and the way you kind of look at things and the way you embrace the hard things in life, and it doesn't really faze you, kind of offends people. A big thing in this movie is Kirsten Dunst isn't particularly fazed by the planet because she's so depressed and she already kind of hates her own existence so much. That's like, well, the planet hits whatever. And it seriously rubs people the wrong way, but also just her depression in general pisses people off and they want to fix it and they want to solve it. I think it's worth, I mean, if you don't catch it from the title of the movie and the plot, like, it is worth going into the movie knowing that it's about depression, because it really nails just like, yes, this is how you are treated. This is how people talk. This is how it feels. Alexander Skarsgård's in this as the husband. He's excellent here. This is right when he started really doing some interesting work. You've also got Stellan Skarsgård, who isn't playing his dad. He's playing a different guy. Someone else plays Alexander Skarsgård's dad in this. You've also got, is it Kiefer Sutherland? Yeah, you've got Kiefer Sutherland in this movie, which feels like weird casting, but he's fantastic in this movie. Charlotte Rampling from Dune, you know, the woman who's like, silence. Yeah, she's in this. She's awesome. She's hilarious. There's actually a lot of good laughs at the start of this movie. There are also so many moments of utter transcendent beauty. Lars went from Antichrist, his most, like, there were moments of beauty in that movie, but viscerally confronting stuff in that movie. And then he goes and just is like, I'm just going to make some of the most beautiful shit you've ever seen ever. Kirsten Dunst looks incredible in this movie. The whole cast are outfitted to the nines. The set, the buildings, all of it's beautiful. It's still shot in that sort of Dogma 95 style to an extent, but then occasionally he'll break that for these incredibly hypnotic slow motion sequences, these visuals of what the planet looks like. The opening sequence, I won't spoil the opening sequence because I want you to interpret whether that's a vision or a dream or hypothetical or whatever yourself if you haven't seen the movie before. But the opening sequence is just incredible. Just incredible. The movie is split into two halves, and I will say, Charlotte Gainsbourg, who was in Antichrist, she's also the lead in Nymphomaniac, I would say is underrated in this film. She's very, very good. And she kind of takes over the movie for the last half, I would say. It's actually more of a double bill. Not only is the movie split into two halves, but I would make the case that the first half is focused on Kirsten Dunst and her depression and sort of the contrast of what she's feeling compared to the potential for this planet to collide. The second half, however, is more focused, in my opinion, on Charlotte Gainsbourg and her being more anxious and neurotic and the difference in their reactions. And it's such a good sort of almost exploration of type A, type B. And I will say Lars is very good at getting sisterly dynamics right. He aced it. He aced it in Breaking the Waves, the dynamic between Bess and her sister. And I think he nails it here too. Very true to life, and most notably, very true, I found at least, to kind of inter-family, like the way women in the family talk to one another. I think he fucking nails it here. But the interplay between Charlotte Gainsbourg and Kirsten Dunst in the first and the second half is wonderful. I personally took it that the second half was a bit more about anxiety, you know, wanting to control things that you can't control, whereas the first half was almost this like, and what will be, I'm sad, whatever sort of approach. Either way, as this movie really starts to sing and lock into this will the planet collide or not, it just gets utterly hypnotic. Look, do I think maybe you could tighten the movie up slightly? Maybe. But by the time you get to the ending, the ride there is just so unbelievably worth it that I would feel stupid giving this anything less than a 5. I think it's not my favorite Lars, but for a lot of people it is, and I totally get why. I would say it's his most easygoing movie, but to me, Melancholia feels like a nice reward after getting through some of his more tougher material. You know, you can easily start with Melancholia, but that's sort of the most conventional and nice you'll get, you know? Melancholia, a movie about the world potentially ending. But to me, it's like, I think you should pick the movies you're interested in, and maybe the ones I recommend, maybe the ones that in general people recommend, and go in release order. Does that make sense? So find his notable ones, go in release order, because they're always referencing themselves. They're always building on one another. They have ideas from other movies. You know, even Dogville has a character who is blind but trying to pretend that he's not blind. You know, I might actually put that in the Dogville review. Marshall reminded to put that in the Dogville review. But yeah, I just think this movie is wonderful. We're going to get into spoilers now. Please leave if you haven't seen this movie. Just go. Watch it. At the very least, you'll like it a fair amount. Spoilers. 3, 2, 1. All right, that opening section basically being what happens in the movie is awesome. Now, I know Lars said that it's important for audiences to see the opening and go, oh, this is a summary of what's to come. So that way we are in Kirsten Dunst's worldview and we kind of sit there and we go, these characters are being stupid. They can't change this. I will say, if you don't know that insight from Lars going into the film, I feel like a lot of people would take it as this is a hypothetical. This is a dream sequence. This might be what could happen. And part of the wonderful nature of this movie is as you watch the movie, you start seeing those visuals come to life from the movie and you're like, oh, the world's ending. I've seen all of those signs from the intro, the world's kind of close. But in saying that, while you're watching Kirsten Dunst's half, you're sort of sitting there like, yeah, okay, maybe there is some beauty in the world ending. But when you get to Charlotte Gainsbourg's half, you do feel for her. You're like, yeah, fuck, like that is awful. And the reveal that Kiefer Sutherland has taken himself out, all of this other stuff it just starts ramping up. And by the end of the movie, you almost started in Kirsten Dunst's perspective. You're like, yeah, I kind of want the world to wipe out. But then at the end, similar to what I was talking about with Breaking the Waves and Space Odyssey, that visual of a planet colliding is genuinely like something I've never seen before. It's horrific. The way it fills up the entire screen, it starts to come so rapidly. It's all so good. I think Lars absolutely nails it. I love the opening to this film, of the ending to this film. I love the music. I love the way characters are brought in and discarded. Like Alexander Skarsgård just kind of leaves this thing. You also have this great moment where Stellan tries to break a plate. And yeah, I don't think this movie is that hard to unpack. I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, the depressed people are always right. But it is getting at that feeling of when you're depressed, you do handle catastrophic things better. I mean, like when my dad passed away, I was in a serious bout of depression. I remember I felt like I was handling that really well for a bit. And then once I kind of got over my depression, it turned into something else. So that was pretty tough. But these are feelings that I think will be deeply relatable for a lot of people. I think it's Lars sort of putting his entire heart and chest into a movie and just like laying himself bare. That shot of Kirsten Dunst naked near the river, almost like a siren, like almost trying to like sensually call the planet in closer almost. She's like, look at me, here I am. It feels like she's almost like flirting with the planet, wishing it would come closer. And it's not a dream or anything. I always thought, because I think I'd seen that shot in the trailer, or before I'd seen the movie, I'd seen people talk about it. And I always thought it was a dream sequence, but Charlotte Gainsbourg comes up, sees this happening. And it almost feels like when Willem Dafoe makes certain discoveries about his wife in Antichrist, Charlotte Gainsbourg looks at Kirsten Dunst doing this, and it's like, oh my fucking God, like she wants the world, like she thinks this is fun and beautiful. What's she doing? Just a wonderful, wonderful movie. Love Melancholia. All right, next we have Nymphomaniac, Volume 1, Volume 2. We're going to review it as Nymphomaniac. We're going to go Kill Bill with it, right? You know how Quentin Tarantino is like, no, if I had it my way, Kill Bill would have been one movie. It's the same with Lars. He views Nymphomaniac Volume 1 and Volume 2 as one big movie. Yes, some people need to pay for 2 tickets to 2 separate movies. On digital, they're 2 separate movies. They are meant to be one big movie. We will be talking about it as such, sort of. All right, so this whole section is going to be Nymphomaniac Volume 1, Volume 2. Once I've covered both parts, we'll talk about them kind of interchangeably to an extent. The first half of the movie, the first volume, mainly focuses on this younger version of the character, played by this woman here. I think her name's Stacey Martin. She's fantastic in this movie. And the older version is played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. By the way, we will devote an entire section to these posters, but I absolutely love these posters. What I will say about this movie is it is really good, and there are fantastic parts in it. In saying that, though, this is one where if people kind of thought it was a bit up its own butt at times, some parts don't work. Like, I really like this movie, and there are objectively parts in the movie that straight up do not, like, they just don't work. And we'll get into that. But for those of you who don't know what the movie is about, the movie's about this woman named Jo, all right? And she's like in an alleyway, beat up. And then this guy played by Stellan Skarsgård picks her up, right? He's like, oh my God, are you okay? You've been beat up. You're in an alleyway. How'd you get here? Let's chat. And then she tells her whole life story of her obsession with sex, the fact that she's a nymphomaniac, and how that eventually got her to being beat up in an alley and picked up by Stellan Skarsgård. For some reason, I always had in my memory that Stellan Skarsgård's character was a priest. But no, he is asexual though. So there's clearly some like, oh, she's obsessed with sex, he's asexual. Whoa, you know, it feels very much like a philosopher's wet dream. And in saying that, a lot of the movie plays like this, all right? I've heard a lot of criticism about the fact that in this movie, right, because Jo is telling her story, her narration is her telling the story of her life to Stellan Skarsgård's character, and he oftentimes interjects. like all the time, with random bullshit. You know, she'll be like, I was on a train with my friend trying to bang as many guys as possible. And he'll be like, you know, that's actually about fly fishing. The interesting thing about fly fishing. This is intentional. A lot of people have watched this movie and been like, oh my God, like it's Lars Von Trier just like mansplaining and having these stupid like spring off sections that don't contribute to the plot. Now, whether you like that or not is one thing, but I do think it's intentional. I think what this movie is sort of trying to get at is this dynamic between a guy who thinks he understands women, thinks he understands female dynamics, female sexuality. He's almost like a white knight at times. It's very much similar to the character I brought up in Dogville, but I actually think this is Lars Von Trier doing a bit of a self-critique. Lars Von Trier has stated that pretty much all the time the male characters in his movies are idiots, they're morons. And I think here this is meant to be, maybe this is both sides of Lars Von Trier. You know, maybe Joe, Charlotte Gainsbourg's character, represents a certain part of him and maybe Stellan represents another part of him. But I do think there's some self-insert. I do think there's a bit of like, oh, look, this guy's trying to make artistic connections and he thinks he's such a genius in these roundabout defenses. Whereas this woman's been like, listen to me. Some of this is not good. Some of this got me in trouble. I hurt people. This was bad. So yeah, on one end, you can see some of Lars's own self-loathing mirrored in here. I will say though, when this movie sings, and that's the reason I still have it ranked so highly, there are sections that don't work. Most notably, I think Christian Slater isn't a bad actor. Here we go. No, we're not bringing it up. All right, so Christian Slater, he's not a bad actor. He plays Joe's father. His character just doesn't work, let alone the performance, but they have a big section around his character and it completely grinds the volume 1 of this movie, like the first movie, to an absolute halt, which is a shame because I actually think everything else in volume 1 is thoroughly entertaining. You have the opening section where she's a genuine child discovering things about her body, which I just thought was really bold, striking filmmaking. And also, without getting like too explicit, brought me back to when I was younger and I was discovering things. I'm like, whoa, like interesting thoughts were occurring, which is the goal of art. And then we get to a young sort of teenager-ish, young adult version where she's on the train with her friend. That's a fantastic sequence, despite Stellan's interjections. And we then have this amazing section, which I won't spoil the hookup. We have this amazing section with Uma Thurman. We have this fantastic section where we're seeing all her lovers, and where volume 1 thrives is all the different portrayals of sex. I mean, we can even see it in this poster here, right? You have some people that like, they look hot, like it's hot, right? Look at, you know, Shia LaBeouf showed up and was like, I'm just gonna like aura farm. Mia Goth, Joe, you know, there are some really seductive shots in this, and then there are some really confronting ones. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård's poster is a full-on poster. Do you get what I mean? Like, some of them are sort of framing the beauty of sex. You look at, say, Uma Thurman's character, Shia LaBeouf's character. S is somewhere in between, and then you've got these really confronting ones. I mean, for some reason, Joe's father feels like this powerful violation. You've got F, like, it's fantastic, and I would say that's indicative of the movie itself. If I have to give the movie credit for one thing, I don't think it's a particularly leery movie, despite the fact that it's got some of the most explicit sexual content you'll probably ever see in a movie. I mean, what you end up seeing in this scene in Volume 2, it's pretty wild. It is pretty wild. A lot of what is explored in Volume 2 is really full on. It's quite a lot, but in saying that, I find the way it kind of frames sex, sometimes there are scenes that do genuinely look seductive and enticing, but a lot of it is ugly and confronting, and it reminds you of, I think, you know, sort of the complicated nature you have with actually discovering these things about yourself, doing these things for the first time. Like, there are scenes where it feels like you can smell the room, and it is really interesting watching Joe as a character who is almost completely emotionally detached from the act of sex. Like, she enjoys it on a primal physical level, but she doesn't hold it in the same weight that other people do. You know, this will clash with people that really care about their relationships, you know, care about infidelity, see cheating and the physical connection as something that is intrinsically linked with love. And we explore that throughout the movie. You know, I think the tagline for this movie is "Forget About Love." It's a fantastic tagline. And again, I cannot stress to you enough how much I love all of the posters for this movie. All of them are crazy. I mean, even this like big portrait mosaic, I'll pull it on the screen in like good quality, but absolutely crazy. So Volume 1 is a movie where I would give it a 4 to a 4.5 when it's really singing. There are sequences in the first half that are absolutely fantastic. I think overall people seem to like the first half better. But there is an entire section with Joe's father that should hit emotionally like a truck. You really should be connected to it. I think Lars is very good at emotionally manipulating an audience when he wants to. But it's completely dead on arrival. You are sort of sitting there being like, can we get back to the sex stuff? Shia LaBeouf is in this movie. He's got an insane physicality to him. There's a lot of great scenes with him. His accent is pretty wild, but I kind of don't care. Like, I don't care. I don't think he's giving a bad performance. I don't know what he was going for with the accent, but it almost adds this weird, clunky charm of the movie. And I actually really like where Volume 1 ends. If you are watching them as 2 volumes, the point where Volume 1 ends is very much like, ooh. Now, I will say, the reason this isn't like a perfect film for me is I think I should be more devastated, titillated, or moved by the plot we are following in Volume 1 or Volume 2. There are some really confronting, depressing ideas linked to this woman and her obsession with sexuality, her obsession with sex, and the way it impacts her life. And I think that could have been dialed up a bit and really nailed it. In fact, I would say that there are concepts that are touched upon here that I think are actually better pulled off, explored, and more devastating in Antichrist. Now, to be fair, I think the movie realizes it's covering similar ground because there's a full-on like reference to Antichrist in Volume 2. But without going into spoilers, there's just some things where I wish we pulled more emotion from it. You know, I wish we saw, when she was younger and growing up, more of like more grounded scenes, you know, maybe some scenes where the teacher's like, look, I really hate to bring this up to you, parent of Joe, but like we caught her in the bathroom doing this, or we found out she did this, or on school camp she did this, or whatever, right? Like, because I would have loved to have known what Joe's father thought of her nymphomania. Like, you don't get a full-on sense of how people around her kind of deal with it. Even the relationship she forms with Shia LaBeouf, it's almost like a vague concept, you know? And I just wish, like, the reason that Uma Thurman scene is so fantastic is you have Charlotte Gainsbourg's, or the Stacey Martin version of our lead character, clashing with like a real world person who somewhat has relatively normal emotions, and it's completely clashing. And I think the movie really sings when you're taking Joe, who does have like this emotional detachment and doesn't get the big deal in terms of the emotional side of sex, and you know, she's like, she can be almost like a homewrecker at times and like manipulate men and like fuck with their heads a bit, but she almost sees it as this fun game because there's like some emotional detachment there. And I think this movie really sings when you're taking that and dropping her in a situation with emotionally involved people. And I wish we got more of that. You know, I wish we got more dynamic with her and her father, her and her mother, like experiencing some sort of shame as she was growing up. Like, I just think for a 5-hour movie, which is what this becomes, we could have really connected with it more. And I don't mind the Stellan Skarsgård sort of detours. I actually think, given the ending of the film and where it goes, we actually kind of need those to get a sense of who he is throughout the story. But at the same time, for a 5.5-hour movie, I think we could have got more insight, especially in this first half, to the interiority of Joe, which is weird because the whole time she's narrating it. So you'd think you'd have more. But I will say, there's some stuff in Volume 2, particularly the director's cut. If you can, seek out the director's cut. It's a completely different movie. It's not just like a director's cut where there's like a couple different scenes or like it's for the fans. It's a fundamentally different movie, all right? Without the director's cut, the two of them combined is about 4 hours. You add the director's unrated cut, it's a 5.5-hour movie, like between the two parts. Volume 2 is a whole hour extra, and that whole hour is devoted to a deeply troubling, disturbing subplot. Like, it's fucking insane. I think it was the most visceral, uncomfortable thing I might have ever seen in a movie. And it challenges you, and it challenges you properly. And then the film unpacks why you might feel challenged, whether you should feel challenged afterwards, and kind of like pokes at you as an audience member. It's pretty fantastic. I am talking around spoilers for now. We'll get to a spoiler section later, but Volume 1, I think, is a really solid start, and I would say 80% of it is pretty fantastic. But there's about 10 to 20% of it where it just kind of doesn't quite work. Mainly with Joe's father, I just completely sort of tap out. And then there's some sort of floaty stuff where I'm like, just get back to the story of her telling it. I don't mind these cutaways, but yeah, there's just some sequences in volume 1 that don't quite work, but it also has some of the best stuff in Nymphomaniac, like some incredible stuff. So I would say, if I'm being completely critically honest, I'd say volume 1 is probably like a 7 out of 10. But spiritually, for me, like a 4 out of 5, an 8 out of 10. Like, I really do enjoy it a lot, even if I notice some moments where the pacing kind of doesn't work and some of the stuff, like, objectively doesn't work. Moving on to volume 2, again, we will talk around it, and then we'll do a spoiler section for the whole thing. Volume 2, we spend more time with Joe as an adult. We have this absolutely spectacular sequence, a sequence that kind of makes the whole movie worth it. This section where Joe is doing BDSM, you can see it here where she's tied up here, over there to the left, over there to the left, yep. This whole section where she's doing BDSM stuff and she's tied up and she's going to Jamie Bell from Billy Elliot. First off, you have fantastic performances from both of them. These sections go on for ages. They are... like, I can't even say if they're horny. They're really confronting. There's this deep pain and darkness, but you kind of get what's going on here. And it's where the movie is really crushing it. It's full on, genuinely like bombastic filmmaking. It's well done. And there's some like good sections. I saw this movie where I was fairly young. I think I saw it the year it came out. So I was probably about 15, 16 or so. But there are sequences I've seen in this movie that have like lingered in my brain and will come up like like an intrusive thought at the worst possible times in my own life. You know what I mean? They're fantastic sequences. We also have, I will say, some of the philosophy in this second part is really interesting. I think it starts getting a little more interesting. You also have her going to like sex therapy. You have this section with the three-way up here that I think was kind of used in all the marketing because everyone went, whoa. But where this movie kind of stumbles, and I'll talk around spoilers, but the introduction of Willem Dafoe's character, which is a sentence I never thought would leave my mouth. I absolutely love Willem Dafoe, but unfortunately I think his section here is just way too undercooked. And on top of that, Mia Goth section. I love the Mia Goth poster here. Fantastic poster, but when Mia Goth shows up, the movie initially is kind of interesting. There's some cool stuff going on. She's almost mirroring Joe to a certain extent. You're seeing things that rhyme, that remind you of younger Joe. There's some really interesting stuff here, but it becomes this plot where Mia Goth's character, Willem Dafoe's character, and older Shia LaBeouf's character are all kind of intersecting. And it's just not interesting. If I told you the story on paper, you'd be like, wow, that sounds amazing. But actually in execution, watching how all these stories come together and this really undercooked, what could have been really interesting subplot with Joe finding work through her nymphomania with Willem Dafoe, that should have been a slam dunk. It should have been really interesting. But I think there were more interesting places to take the story given where it lands. Like, I think my issue is the story really should have been about how this woman keeps isolating herself through her sexuality. Maybe there's some commentary in there about how society shames women for their sexuality or her own internal self-loathing. And you keep it like a really dialed in, personal, isolated story. I think that's what The House that Jack built gets really light. It always feels really tightly focused on Jack as a character, whereas in this one, it kind of loses way, and you bring in Willem Dafoe, who's doing this like extortion plot, and then Shia LaBeouf is cast by this older guy, and like genuinely on my first watch, I didn't realize I was older Shia LaBeouf. Like maybe I was young and dumb, but like genuinely, I read Wikipedia and went, oh. Things really start falling apart with this Mia Goth subplot. Like, I just don't think it's anyone's favorite part because it just kind of grinds to a halt, gets a bit convoluted, and sort of like, oh, this isn't as interesting as just watching this woman who loves to smash and keeps escalating the high and getting herself and people around her in danger. Like, that sounds like a slam dunk, doesn't it? But it kind of loses its way. But the issue is, everything else minus this 30-minute closing section where it starts to lose its way is spectacular. So it's like, wow. So this is, to me, this is like Lars's maybe his most personal work. There's a lot of self-hatred, self-loathing, mixing that with artistic expression. Like there's all this stuff going on that makes it feel like a very personal movie for Lars. Through Stellan Skarsgård's character, there's this like critique of almost like these like male feminist posing types who pretend they really understand women and pretend they're allies, but they actually don't really understand women, and they're almost like giving them too much free pass, or like not really engaging with them emotionally the way they want to. You know, Charlotte Gainsbourg will literally be like, oh, the sky is blue, and he'll be like, nah, actually it's red, and that's okay, all right, don't even worry about it. And she's like, no, please, it's blue. You have a lot of interactions throughout the movie where I think it is trying to highlight this sort of like men that think they're trying to do the right thing actually end up doing the worst thing, if that makes sense. And I think that's why the ending is so interesting. But the 20 minutes before you get to that ending are really kind of like, what the hell are we doing here? There is a genuine section of just like kind of staring at the screen being like, all right. And yeah, occasionally the philosophical musing I think works from Stellan Skarsgård as a character, because he has been like that since the moment we've met him. Whereas with Charlotte Gainsbourg's character, with Jo, at a certain point, she just starts also becoming a philosophical musing person. And you start sitting there being like, what did she study in college? How did she know all this? You get what I mean? And I'm not saying that like highly sexual women can't also be smart, but I'm like, we've followed your whole life journey. Like with Stellan Skarsgård's character, I can be like, okay, maybe he's like a nerd, right? With Jo, though, it's like this moment where you realize, wait, I don't know what she did for a job. I don't know what she did for anything, really. How does she know all this stuff? And that's where the movie starts to fall apart, and they both start to feel like just Lars Von Trier talking through these characters for a second, where it's like they're both talking the same way. So it's full of messy problems. It objectively is, but at the same time, the subject matter, like, I'm not trying to sound like a dirty hornbag, but it's just hard to be bored when like there's all this interesting, confronting, sexually depraved, crazy stuff going on. So yeah, I would give it overall as a package like a 7 to an 8 out of 10. And I would say this is like, I can't recommend this if you aren't a Lars Von Trier fan. Look, I know some people absolutely love it, and I love it too. Like spiritually, I have an amazing time with this movie the entire time. But also, if I was watching it with a friend and they weren't vibe yet, this is one where I'd be like, I kind of get it, you know? In saying this though, I would say start with his actual like great stuff, and then this is like a fun, it's almost like a popcorn movie from Lars. Like I think this is like a fun movie to just kind of sit there and be like, whoa, the entire time, except for this section that is added in volume 2 in the director's cut. So we're going to have to talk about spoilers now. So skip to the next one, which will be House That Jack Built. Leave, because we're going to talk about spoilers. So let's talk about it. First off, the threesome scene, absolutely crazy sequence. In terms of what they're actually able to show as well, I was like, this is actually pushing it. Like for a while, I was like, yeah, okay. We've all seen like internet videos, right? Like a lot of this is just like, oh yeah, it's cool to see in a movie. But that section, I was like, damn, this is full on. And more importantly, the self-abortion scene in volume 2, I had never seen. I'd seen this movie like 3 times, maybe 4 times. And I only got the unrated cut on the box set behind me, which I'll probably show up at some point in this video. And I was like, how different could it be? And then I saw the runtime. I was like, whoa, you can't cut this section. Now, I will say, maybe I get cutting the explicit shots of it happening. I consistently was like, surely it's going to cut soon. And you just kept seeing more and more and more. It is a full-on scene. It's a scene where the movie really challenges the audience, all right? Like, Jo goes, you know, I did this to this baby that was inside me. I did this. I did the whole section. I'm not going to get too explicit because I don't want to, like, get myself in trouble. But basically, she's denied an abortion. And so she does it herself through, like, medical training. It's a full-on sequence. And the movie, the script starts really pushing and interrogating at people that are pro-choice, right? And she starts going, like, surely you're disturbed by this story, like the pain I put myself through, what I did to like, surely you are confronted. And Stellan's like, nah, it's your body, your choice, and you have every right to do that. And she pushes it, and she keeps going and telling more explicit versions of the story, and this complete disregard. And then the stuff the film actually shows you, even as some, like, I'm pro-choice too, but the film will like show it in such a horrifying, brutal way where you can't help but be confronted. And what I do appreciate about this section is I think what Lars is trying to get at is almost these men that completely remove themselves from the equation. They go, oh, well, it's a woman's choice. I don't have a say in the matter. I don't even want to think about it. It's almost this way where they don't need to think about the pain of going through that procedure, the mental toll of thinking about what you've done, the guilt that you might feel. And these are all, I'm not going to say valid feelings, like you should feel that way, but these are very realistic feelings to have. And you watch as she talks about the feeling of guilt and the feeling of shame and how confronting this is and how horrific this thing was. And he's sitting there being like, no. You had every right to do that. You had every right to do that. And she's like, please, I'm telling you, this was a really bad, full-on thing that I did. Like, can you validate that for me? And again, like, I think the way it shows it, how brutal it is. I mean, there's a shot of this like fetus twitching on a piece of carpet, like from top down. It is a really horrific, confronting sequence. And I feel like no matter how pro-choice you are, you'll sit there and be like, oh. In saying that, though, I think the conversation after, like, I was sitting there and I was like, I think this might be the most hard to watch thing I've ever seen, like, in a movie. And it almost hit my limit where I'm like, Lars, what are we doing here? And then afterwards, I was sitting there watching that section and I was emotionally charged watching Joe and Stellan Skarsgård's character, Seligman, I think, kind of argue and bicker over it. I was, like, emotionally invested and kind of, like, unsettled in a way where I found myself more immersed in the film. So I'm like, look, he kind of nailed it. It's a full-on sequence, but I think it's also like a really interesting Rorschach test. I think if you're like a pro-life person, it's probably going to send you into a coma, but even just watching it as someone who's like, yeah, of course, like if she wants to get an abortion, and then watching this section, it's truly, I don't know, like it hit this really interesting section, really interesting feeling for me. On top of that, the section, there's a lot of great stuff in Volume 1. I've seen a lot of bad faith criticism. I absolutely love YMS, but the criticism of like, did they want the sweets or not? Like, I thought they didn't care about the sweets. That's part of it, right? Like, they do want to smash, but it's also a thing of like, they want to know that they are better at smashing than the other person. So yeah, it's not really about the sweets, but it's about the victory of being like, I seduced the really hard to get guy. I seduced all these guys. I don't know. It's a fun sequence to me. I love that section. I love the opening section when she is like a young child and figuring these things out. These are things that aren't often talked about. It reminded me of that famous, the author of Fight Club story about that woman with the heating pad. I'll link it somewhere, but really, really interesting. That section's great. The Uma Thurman section is absolutely fantastic. I think it's pretty much undeniably the best scene, if not one of the best scenes in the entire movie, because again, you're taking someone who is totally emotionally detached from, and it's interesting, like almost in a way the movie is pushing at that idea of why do we put so much value, like sex is a natural thing that we used to, when we were like cavemen, we just kind of like did for 2 seconds, like with a bunch of different people, and we've made it into this thing that like, if you do it with multiple people, it's this huge betrayal, which again, not that I like disagree with that now, but you're taking someone who acts on instinct almost, this primal sexual lust, and having them like completely wreck a family, and watching as Uma Thurman is just completely cracking from this. And then the scene just gets better and better. You have like her other lovers show up while this guy's been like, I'll move in with you. And I love that section where she's rolling the dice and figuring out whether she'll break up with these men, ask them to propose to her, like crazy, crazy stuff. Really fun. Again, that BDSM section is fantastic. I also love, here's where it's hard though. I almost think an interesting story to plop in Nymphomaniac is what Antichrist eventually got to. That idea of she was busy smashing and then the baby, she's not taking care of her baby and the baby dies. But they kind of allude to it. And if you've seen Antichrist, it's really good. It's like, oh, you're bringing that up and you're making me make a parallel and we know where this is going already. Well done. If you haven't seen Antichrist, I guess it ruins that sequence a little, but I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as YMS made it seem. I will say the ending of Volume 1 where she can't feel anything more lands as a total gut punch. It's a really, really good section. I really like that section. Now, the Willem Dafoe section is where the movie kind of falls apart to me. It's just this extended sequence where she's like extorting people. I do like some of the sections in this. I like the one where she gets the guy kind of like aroused from a story about a kid. Like, that's a cool, interesting, confronting sequence. But again, then we start having these philosophical musings afterwards where maybe that makes sense out of Stellan's mouth, but her mouth, it's a little more complicated. But I mean, I get where she's coming from. At least with her, she's also someone that's lived with sexual shame. So you're like, sure. We also get this sequence where she kind of says how horrific these stories are. And I think some of the stories are pretty horrific, both what she's subjected to and what she subjects some people to. And that's an okay thing to say. Stalin then kind of goes like, no, you're a woman. And if you're a man, people wouldn't say this stuff. And I'm like, that's not quite true. And I think it's meant to feel a little disingenuous given the ending, right? So he goes on this whole thing of like, you've been unfairly judged because you're a woman, people wouldn't care otherwise, blah, 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 right? And it almost feels a little unearned. And you're like, is this the movie sending its message to me? But then what's interesting, and I think what fixes that potential like overridden moment, is Stellan Skarsgård then creeps into the room afterward and tries to make a move on her. Now, I will throw it out to you. Do you think he deserved to be shot in the face? I think he deserved to be held at gunpoint. He was objectively trying to take advantage of her asleep. Now, I'm not sure if the encounter, if she had woken up, whether he would have like held her down and really gone for it. Like, she picked up a gun and held it at him, right? Or there was this moment where she turns around and she's like, what are you doing? Either way, he crept into her room naked, trying to sleep with her, right? Now, I don't know if he was sitting there thinking that like, if he just started, it would become a consensual thing. Like, it's a bit fucking weird. It's weird and obviously incredibly violating and incredibly terrifying for Joe as a character. In saying that though, I do think her choosing to shoot him rather than like get up, walk away with the gun, whatever, right? I think there's meant to be this sort of like emotionally loaded feeling to it. This feeling of like, I thought you were the one person that I could tell my story to. I trusted you. I have told you how my sexuality has got me all in these situations. And it reframes their dynamic from the past 5 hours, right? I just want to stress what I was saying before. I'm not saying what he was doing was good. I'm just saying, I feel like if there wasn't this level of like emotional hurt that's happening from this moment, maybe she just would have like held the gun and left, or maybe she would be like, get the fuck off me, I'm leaving, right? But I think the reason he gets shot, right? The reason she's like, fuck you. Like, that's how it almost lands to me. Like, the ending, and it lands like that to a lot of people. A lot of people don't like the ending because it feels like a total fuck you to the audience. But to me, what it feels like is this guy has sat there, heard all her stories, and either he was earnestly asexual, and then hearing all these stories, or he thought he was asexual, right? Maybe he's never had success with women, he doesn't show much interest. And then hearing all these stories, he was like, I want to be one of these guys. Like he says, you fuck thousands of men, right? There's this level of entitlement. And after he's given her that speech, that disingenuous speech of being like, oh, you know, you're judged too harshly as a woman, he comes in and says, you fuck thousands of men, like what's one more sort of thing. I think it pisses her off, and it pisses her enough to be like, you know what? I'm not even just going to hold the gun at you and leave. I'm shooting you. Gone. It is a bummer because I think there were moments where Stalin came off genuinely soft and genuinely curious and genuinely earnest, but at the same time, even though 5 hours as a movie feels really long for us, to her, this has been an afternoon. She's felt safe in someone's house for an afternoon. He comes in and yeah, I think if I remember correctly, he like pulls the blanket up while she's asleep and goes to like insert himself. It's a fucking crazy violating move. And yeah, she turns around and then holds a gun at him, but like, can't really blame her for being that pissed off. Like, rightfully so. It's not only terrifying, but I think given the level of safety he pretended to offer her, it is interesting. I don't think it's purely out of character too. If you go back and watch the movie, keeping that ending in mind, you see where it's almost like these distractions start to feel like these almost intentional detours. It's like maybe he's getting like wound up by these stories or getting a little invested, so it's almost like this coping mechanism to be like, oh, actually it's like this. His responses are strange and baffling throughout the movie. It's almost this performative level of asexuality. His admission of being asexual on a second round almost feels like this thing of like, you can keep telling me all this crazy stuff. It's like, was he actually? I've seen some people say this is a bad representation of asexual people, but I don't know. To me, that's like if I said like, oh, Stellan Skarsgård's character is a bad representation of men. Do you get what I mean? Like they can be bad people in any subset of society. And again, maybe he's just pretending to be asexual to hear all these stories and continue hearing all these stories. There are some genuine moments of like empowerment too, though. I do love the section where she goes to the sex therapy group and she's like, I love my C-bomb. I love it so much. Like, fuck you guys. Like, it's an awesome section. I will say the Mia Goth section is initially really interesting. I like them getting in a relationship. I like her feeling like a younger version. But when you get to the ending and you have Mia Goth somehow meeting Shia LaBeouf, getting a relationship with him. Now Shia LaBeouf doesn't look like Shia LaBeouf. He looks like he's a different actor. And then they go, you know, she goes to shoot them. They punch her. Like, he ends up being one of the clients. It's also rushed. You don't feel anything. Most people I know that have seen this movie don't, like, it's not that they don't understand the ending. It's just, like, leaves their brain. Like, the last 30 minutes, they're just like, oh, and then what was going, oh, yeah, I guess, okay. And then Mia Goth, like, pees on her. I will say, in almost this edgelord shock value sort of way, I do like Jerome, Shia LaBeouf's character, banging Mia Goth's character the same way he took Joe's virginity earlier on in the movie, like the 3+5, I think it is. Is it that? That's kind of cool, but it's like, I don't know enough about Jerome to know why he would do that. He doesn't feel like Jerome anymore, like on a physical level. Like Joe, I can kind of buy, but this guy completely, we've spent no time with him. I don't know why he would do that. We've also seen him being like a completely normal, well-adjusted parent, completely shocked by Joe's behavior. You know, like there's a section, it's so weird. There's a section where Shia LaBeouf, the actor, the actual Shia LaBeouf, is with Joe, played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. You know, the section where she's out doing BDSM and the kid almost falls out the window. There is a, like, you've got the younger actor still with the older actress of Joe. Why didn't you just keep it that way? You replace the actor at one point, so we don't feel it. But also, like, it's complete character shift. He's been totally reasonable up until this point. I don't know what changed. Like, did he lose his kid? Like, he's just gonna bang me a goth on the street. So it's like, it's a cool moment where I'm like, oh yeah, that's the ultimate fuck you. But I'm like, oh, Jerome has been about 3 different characters throughout this movie. So look, the lazy defense, and I never like it, is when people hit you with the unreliable narrator thing. It's everyone's favorite go-to to avoid criticism, is just like, well, maybe this is just her subjective perspective. But it's like, people only bring that up when a movie isn't working okay, not only, but most of the time when people bring that up, it's when a movie isn't working or they're trying to make something fit that doesn't really fit the movie. So unless we're going to view the entire film as this unreal fever dream, maybe we just have to go, Lars could have left this script in the oven for a little longer and aced it a little more. Because yeah, the back end of this movie doesn't work. But aside from that, dude, a lot of this movie's fucking sick, man. Like, a lot of it's really, really good. Anyways, moving on to House That Jack Built. All right, so then we get to House That Jack Built. This is Lars Von Trier's gonzo horror serial killer. To me, even though there's a bunch of like pretentious detours and there's a bunch of like philosophical musings, I do think it's a lot tighter than Nymphomaniac. But my point being is, I still think, even with all its warts, this is bordering on the ultimate serial killer movie. And it feels totally effortless to Lars. You know what I mean? Like, compared to something like Antichrist and some of his really full-on demented stuff, this is still properly demented, but it feels like he could poop this out every couple of years in a good way. There's something effortless and free about the filmmaking, while also being some of the most captivating stuff ever. Unreliable narrator or not, whether you think all of these things you're watching are his memories and perception of events, or whether it is just this strange satire where all the women are kind of dumb and all the cops are really dumb and everyone is kind of dumb except for Jack, which, as I say it does make it sound more like his subjective worldview. But I also think there's like a really funny sense of humor if you just kind of like take the movie literally. But there are some of the best, most interesting visuals I've ever seen. I mean, like, just look at this. Like, even the poster, it's just so clean and like high contrast. And Matt Dillon's look in this movie as the titular Jack is so captivating. So for those of you who don't know, the House That Jack Built is about a serial killer who is kind of on a journey somewhere, right? And he's on a journey with this guy, and this guy's like, tell me about your life. So Jack, the serial killer, chooses to tell us, the audience, and this guy he's with on this journey, about 5 different incidents. Each incident is a different murder, basically, all right? And I don't know. Is that enough for 2.5 hour movie? Because for me, hell yeah, it is. Every single one of these things is either hilarious or deeply unsettling, and most of the time it's a mixture of both. I just want to stress, I love the posters for this movie. Awesome. Like, this is the lead actor, Matt Dillon, kind of like composed as a weird, what's the term? What's the term? When you take animals and move them around after they're dead. Someone can leave it in the comments. But regardless, you've got Lars Von Trier, the director, like that as well, with like a foot and a hand and a foot and a hand. You've got this woman. Dude, these posters are sick. What I will say about Lars is his movies themselves are fair. Like, look at these posters, man. These are awesome. It's like Nymphomaniac, but for crazy murder. Dude, these posters are incredible. Anyway, so all 5 incidents are utterly hypnotic and fascinating. The opening one with Uma Thurman feels like this prod for about 20 minutes. This guy is desperately trying not to like murder this woman, and she's like, it'd be crazy. It would be crazy if you murdered me right now. Like, can you imagine if you're a serial killer? It'd be so easy for you. What a dumb I am. And he's like sitting there twitching, being like, I actually am trying not to. Please stop harassing me. The second incident is funny for a while he's trying to get into the house, and he's like the world's worst liar. He goes up to this woman's house and he's like, yo, can I come in? I need to check your insurance policy or something. And it's one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen. And then it gets into something really horrific and hard to watch and makes you sit in it for ages. And it's uncomfortable and weird. And then afterwards, you have this exploration of him trying to clean up the crime scene, but unfortunately he has OCD. So like every time he drives off, he's like, oh wait, I might have left blood in the room somewhere. And at first it's like blood where it makes sense. All right. I don't want to spoil how the murder goes down, but it's not a super bloody crime scene. But at first you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense to check. But then it starts being like places that it would have been impossible for the blood to be. And it's such a good demonstration of OCD in this like weird fucked up horror movie. And that's the thing about this movie. Like, it has strange detours. Occasionally he talks about architecture for like 10 minutes. Occasionally he'll like wax philosophical about the virtue of confrontational art. Like, Jack himself is clearly meant to be a stand-in for Lars Von Trier. I mean, the character is murdering and putting women through a bunch of stuff. It's a very clear parallel to how people view Lars. It's almost like this leaning into how people see me. I guess I am the villain sort of mode. But even without that, it's just riveting in my opinion. Like, does all of it work? No. Some of it feels sarcastic and strange, but it also does kind of work. Like, I'm not going to pretend I'm not glued to the screen for the entire 2.5 hour runtime. I've heard people's complaints, and I just don't care. I just don't care. Is there a montage of previous Lars Von Trier movies in this movie? Yes. Do I care? I don't know how to explain it. I don't give a shit. Like it happens, and I'm like, cool, whatever. I also respect the parallels he's drawing. What I do find interesting is he makes Jack kind of admire some of the Nazi aesthetic and design, which is obviously clearly like almost Lars Von Trier doubling down on how he was somewhat mischaracterized in what he was trying to say at Cannes, and just being like, yeah, okay, like fine, I'm a sicko then. I'm a serial killer. There's this whole section where he talks about the fact that these planes were designed with this siren to scare people as they're coming towards them, and it's not actually the sound of the plane diving. It's a siren that's been attached, and it's like, yeah, a serial killer would kind of find that impressive. I don't know. I find all the detours utterly compelling. The third incident is crazy. I'm not even going to spoil the third incident. The third incident is wild, though. Number 4 is great with Riley Keough. And then number 5 gets in this weird mode where it's like, you shouldn't be rooting for him, but you kind of want to see what he's working on, all right? Number 5, he tries to make this like artistic statement. He's like, all great killers have their one artistic statement. I'm going to do it. And that's the thing. Like, a lot of what Jack is doing, this house he's trying to build throughout the movie, it's meant to be somewhat of an allegory for a tortured artist. And yeah, you could make this sort of like, oh, this is Lars Von Trier being up his own butt. But they do enough to me developing his obsession with architecture and never being able to finish a job, and he has like all this funding to make a house and he can just never get it right and he's never happy with the end result. It kind of works for me. Like, I just get it. I'm totally on the movie's wavelength the entire time. And on top of that, as a horror fan, there are some of the most harrowing, strange, confronting visuals I've ever seen in a movie. And there's a bluntness to it that I really respect. I mean, some of the stuff that happens with Riley Keough's character and her anatomy, some of the, like what he ends up building the house as towards the end of the movie is crazy. And again, like, if you look at these posters and you're like, holy shit, that's awesome, you'll probably like the movie. If you look at these posters and you're like, fuck Lars, fuck this guy, don't watch the movie. But for me, I don't know, man. And there's something about the needle drops. It plays the same song like 7 times. That fame, do. I don't care. It's awesome. The trailer, this movie has one of the best trailers I've seen in my goddamn life. It's so good.
With you, you might as well be a serial killer. You do kind of look like one.
And the movie's weird. It's freaky. I have a friend who saw this movie at the cinemas, because Australia, sometimes we miss out on things. We had a one night only release, but I don't know. I think I was too busy being depressed or something to like realize. And my friend went. I am forever jealous of him. But yeah, I love how this movie looks. I love how it's shot. I love the narration. Is it juvenile and probably a bit manipulative and a little simple? Yeah, but like, it all just works for me. Again, it's like what I mentioned before, where Lars can be incredibly not pretentious, but he can be as subtle as a sledgehammer to the teeth, right? He's not subtle, but that's kind of why I like him. All right, like, I like the movie's over the top visual presentation. I like Matt Dillon standing there aura farming, explaining literally everything. And I mean, the back end, some of the visuals you get in the back end, when it's revealed the journey that Jack is on and where we're heading and who this guy is, they're incredible. There's this incredible mix of humor, and occasionally there's these moments where you get insight into his psyche. It poses questions of like, is this a character that purely lacks empathy and there is no humanity there? Because there are moments where you're like, well, what the hell was the end goal there? And again, like, in a weird way, after a while, you just kind of start going with the movie. And it's the ultimate morbid curiosity movie. If you're someone who watches dark, confronting things because there's this weird feeling you get of like compulsion towards them, you're like, I want to test myself. This movie is almost that on steroids. It's like, we're just going to go for some crazy stuff, and you're either going to completely embrace it or completely reject it. But I also don't think it's without merit. I don't think it is a purely dumb spectacle movie. At the same time, I don't think it's a movie where you're meant to really intellectualize certain aspects of it. But I don't know, just go for the ride. And what I also like is, weird comparison here, but I've always looked at Django Unchained as a really good example of the ways within one film you can have different flavors of violence. When you watch Django Unchained, when you watch that Mandingo scene where the 2 slaves are like forced to fight each other to the death, it's awful, it's confronting. I get like a bit of brow sweat every time I watch it. It's genuinely quite horrific violence. And I commend Tarantino for being able to pull that off, and then later in the movie have me cheering at other violence and laughing with glee at other violence. I think it's a real testament to a filmmaker where you can have both ends of the spectrum. Now, to be fair, House the Jack built isn't going for like as deep a commentary as Django Unchained was with its violence. I mean, maybe sort of, but you get what I mean? Like, it's not the same level of emotional weight, but there are different levels to it. There are sequences that are funny. There are also sequences that are incredibly confronting. There are sequences where it feels like Lars is knowingly prodding at the audience, being like, bet you wouldn't see that in a movie, boom. There's a certain scene with a wallet, that's all I'll say, that get a chuckle out of me. But at the same time, the second victim in the house just lingers for so long. And more importantly, the sequence with Riley Keough kind of recontextualizes the rest of the movie, because you spend a lot of the time of the movie, I don't know, at least for me, it almost functions as a strange, morbid comedy, like a black comedy. But when you get to the Riley Keough scene and you have to sit with it, and Jack, it's an interesting thing, right? Because we can follow serial killers and almost just be like, oh yeah, they killed someone. But when they start gaslighting and manipulating and being like verbally cruel, it unsettles us more. It's like, is murder not the worst thing ever? But it's interesting because you watch a bunch of these murders and you're like, yeah, okay, that was pretty full on. That's not a good thing. But you get to the Riley Keough one and you stop laughing. You stop kind of having fun for a second. It's a pretty awful 15-minute section where it grounds the movie. Previously, the movie has felt, as I was saying, like this weird, subjective, strange, alternate reality. Everything seems to work out for Jack. But the Riley Keough section is quite tough. It is quite tough. And she gives a fantastic performance. And that's what I like about Lars in his movies. He'll have people show up for like 15 minutes max and just absolutely crush and then leave. And it's like, if I was in his shoes and I had someone crush as much as Riley Keough or even Uma Thurman in the opening, I mean, you could have had the whole movie be Uma Thurman and Matt Dillon. And I do just want to stress, Matt Dillon, I'm going to say it, I think it's one of the best performances I've ever seen, period. I think he's so good in this movie. And it's such a shame that like Lars Von Trier became like kind of persona non grata. People really stopped liking him and stopped engaging with his art for a bit because I almost feel like this movie's lost in the shuffle a bit. There's some incredible stuff, which we'll get into in the spoiler section. So we're going to talk about spoilers now. I feel like I've said everything I can to gas this movie up. It is probably one of my favorites from Lars. It's pretty fucking sick, man. But let's get to it. Spoilers. Click to the end ranking if you want, which I'll rank all the movies in my subjective order, as well as some like ending notes. So skip below, but let's talk about House of the Jack Built spoilers. So just loosely, let's go through some of the photos here. Oh, I love the scene where he's in the mirror and he's practicing facial expressions. This is a moment where it feels like the movie is getting out a deeper interiority. Again, like a lot of the film feels like just this broad satire, but this scene adds some like real, I've thought about this character for a while. And maybe it is something Lars does. I also absolutely adore, I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at these visuals. I mean, even this poster here where he's in the meat locker thing. And there's so much attention to detail. Can I just say the idea that he bought this freezer full of frozen pizza that he never really ate, because of course he wouldn't eat frozen pizza. But in the scene where he's trying to pull off the Full Metal Jacket sequence, where he's trying to line up the world's fattest collateral with the like 12 people, right? The reason, you know, what adds to that for me is like the fact that their knees are on pizza boxes. There's like thought. I'm like sitting there and thinking like this director had to build this all practically, like the actual real world Lars, and like strokes of genius where it just adds to the lived in feeling of this world, of this character. So, I mean, let's look at this. I mean, the gore looks spectacular, but goddamn, like the scene with this kid, both the scene when these kids die and also just this scene where he's making, I'm blanking on the term, but you know what I'm talking about, when you take the animals and arrange them. And he arranges them to have a smile and then smiles back. There's almost this weird sadness, odd, strange distortion of humanity shining through. I mean, when he gets the red robe, come on. And the house that he, oh my God, the house that he builds here, the body house, dude, I think you could actually see this as an exhibition. But that's one of the craziest visuals I think I've ever seen. On top of that, there's just some incredible storytelling here. And we'll get to the end section in Dante's Inferno later, because that's incredible too. But there's some like storytelling in this that is really fascinating. The sequence where he gets the cops to come in after he's like OCD cleaned. And he almost wants the cops to like really, really look and really double check every nook and cranny, because if he doesn't get caught after that, it's a sort of validation of his OCD pursuit. It's a validation that it wasn't in waste and he did a really, really good job of cleaning. So he's like, no, check everything. You got to check under those paintings. You got to check everywhere. And the cop's like, what the hell are you doing? Go away. And then he suspiciously obviously drives off with the body attached to the back of his van, scraping the head the entire time, leaving a blood trail all the way back to his house. And then it rains and it washes all the blood away. It's just a great sequence. It gets me every single time. Every single time. It feels like God is almost working for him, not against him. It's a great sequence. I love also, and I'm wrong about this, like I'm going to say, all right? I love this sequence where he takes out the family he's with. Now, I'm going to take it a step further. I had to Google and double check. They are not his kids. This is a woman he's seen, and she has her own kids. And on one end, it's super horrifying that this guy comes into this woman's life, takes her out, and takes out her entire family. Awful. Like, inherently awful. Is this a hot take that I almost would have preferred it if they were his kids? Hear me out on this one. If Jack, this weird sociopath who has no feelings, committed to the bit that hard, the same way he commits to the bit of the Full Metal Jacket thing at the end, that he meets a woman, has sex with a woman where he doesn't really seem to care about having sex, but he just does it like a robot, manages to bring 2 kids into this world. In the long game, that at one point he eventually gets to take him out from a rooftop, that's crazy, man. Like, does that not add to the craziness of the character? And yeah, you'd have to deal with, like, as if she'd fall for him if he's this emotionally attached, etc., etc. Like, I agree. But, like, there's something almost, like, demonically evil about that. Like, I'm going to bring these kids into the world just to take them out. But they didn't go that direction. I had to Google it. Apparently it is just, someone else's kids. But, I mean, that's still fucking horrific. I love the visuals of the rare. I mean, and that's the thing. The movie plays with humor. Like, you shouldn't be laughing. But watching it shift from, like, watching him talk about, like, oh, you got to wear the red caps so I can see him. Now, don't take those red caps off. And you know where it's going. And there's this awful morbid sense of humor throughout the movie where it's just so unbelievably dark that it wraps back around to almost being a little funny. I love the section with young Jack. It's brief, but it's fantastic, where he's messing with the duck, puts the duck back. Proper disturbing stuff. I love the end frame after he's wiped out the family with all the pheasants. And yeah, that's what's funny. He's talking about the ethics of hunting and how mean hunting is. After being a killer, he's acting like morally virtuous. There are so many moments where Jack is acting morally virtuous while doing, like, obviously the most awful stuff. The Dante's Inferno section, it just goes hard. It's not the most subtle. It's a simple movie. A guy is going to hell. He's being punished. I mean, yeah, like, maybe Lars is up his own butt here and he's going, I'm being punished for my own art. I'm going to hell for my own art. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Like, maybe Lars Von Trier is slightly misunderstood sometimes. If he feels that way, whatever. We get a banger movie out of it. The section where, of course, he chooses to climb round because he just can't. He's like, I'm smarter than everyone. I'll be fine. And he gets dragged to hell, and we have the white inversion that he talked about when he talks about photos earlier in the movie. It all just cooks. It all just sings. I think it's really, really good. We've talked about all 5, have we? Number 1, yeah, he kills Uma Thurman. I mean, that whole section is hilarious. Number 2 is the woman. Yeah. The section where he, like, chokes her, but it kind of goes wrong. And then her throat kind of inflames and he has to, like, that's too much. It's a combination of the practical effects, however they did that, and then the sound design of her going, it's too much. It's genuinely, like, that scene is a perfect example of going from what felt like a humorous scene to really making you sit in it. Number 3, is that Riley Keough? No, number 3 is the family wipeout. Incredible. Number 4 is the Riley Keough section. That's where he starts talking about himself as Mr. Sophistication. You find out people know about Mr. Sophistication, and he starts calling her simple, and then he starts really taunting her. And that's the thing. He's meant to be, like, almost bordering on emotionless, but he really starts to enjoy it here. I think that's what kind of crosses the line and makes the scene a lot darker, is he really starts enjoying, like, actively toying with her. Getting her to scream out loud, it's mean. But there's some good stuff in this movie, and you get some humanity in this moment. There's this moment where he gets her to say something, or he wants to say something, and they have a phone call from different rooms, and it's almost like a cute lived-in scene. You get a sense that they have actually had a relationship, but then he just goes, fuck it, I'm bored, I'm just going to kill her. I mean, lops her boobs off, and then he puts one on the cop car as a fuck you for getting a parking ticket, and then the other one he makes a boob wallet out of. Cinema. absolute cinema. Like, I don't know what's like. It's crazy. It's crazy shit. But I don't know, man. It's also just hypnotic and super entertaining. Number 5, you get the Full Metal Jacket sequence, and you almost want to see what it's like. Is it just me? Is it just me? Like, I'm sitting there, I'm watching him line up these people. Also, really incredible performance from that guy, the soldier, who's like, "Sir, I worked in the US military. That is not a Full Metal Jacket, sir." And then we get maybe my favorite quote performance from the entire movie, which is Jack going up to the gun store owner. One of my favorite scenes. And he's like, "What does it say on the box?" He's like, "Full Metal Jacket bullet, sir." He goes, "And what's this?" "It's not a Full Metal Jacket, is it? Is it that much to ask that the contents of inside the box match what's printed on the label?"
Is it too much to fucking ask that the contents of the box match what's written on the label?
"Get me a Full Metal Jacket bullet." And the guy clearly knows that Jack is trying to kill people. And he's like, "What's it for?" He's like, "I like coming to this store because you don't ask stupid fucking questions." It's so good. And at this point, he knows the cops are onto him. And he's like, I just go get this Full Metal Jacket bullet done. I also like how it's communicated. I think clearly Jack gets shot by the cops when they point the little gun through, or he's about to be. All right. He dies either. I think he dies before he makes the shot. All right. So the cops come in and shoot him, or they shoot through the door. And then that bottom opens up. Right. So I think that's clearly communicating. He died here, but now, and it is actually happening. He is going to hell, but we are now entering his journey to hell. I mean, I love in the Dante's Inferno section, just that quiet moment where they look out the window and then there are people kind of chopping the weeds or whatever that we saw earlier in the movie when he was a kid. Like, for some reason, this is a really like imprinted formative memory for him. He's seen there with this guy and they're just like vibing and there's like a moment of stillness. I also, you know what, like, unlike Nymphomaniac, where I think that movie kind of demanded a bit more maybe interiority with what the relationship with her parents were like, etc., etc. With this movie, I kind of like the vagueness. He almost feels like this demon that has popped up on the planet just to wipe out women. Like, he's a weird as fuck dude. But like, yeah, I just think this is great. I think this is really compelling. And truthfully, it's ruined all other serial killer movies for me, even with the crazy montages of Lars's old movies and the artistic detours. Like, I don't, like, even Dexter, I don't think there's a serial killer piece of media that gives me more of what I want if I'm going down like an actual dark route. All right. Yeah. Some movies are deeper and some movies are probing deeper into the psychology of it, for sure. But like, in terms of morbid curiosity, I think House the Jack Built just crushes it. I think it crushes it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Anyways, that's House That Jack Built. All right, so just quickly, the Sofia Coppola video I did was a ranking, but I found too many of the comments got way too caught up on the ranking. And for Lars, I wanted to do proper deep dive reviews of these movies. But now I'll give you the ranking, my personal ranking anyway. So we've got 13 movies to get through. It would have been 14 if I split Nymphomaniac, but like, no way. So number 13, we have Epidemic. This is, in my opinion, Lars's only truly bad film. This is not a good movie. From there, we're into like pretty good to great. So element of crime being this low is just a testament to how much I actually love Lars's films. So we have Element of Crime at number 12. Pretty good idea, pretty cool movie, but again, like a movie that works better when you read like the Wikipedia summary than actually like kind of watching it. You know, like going like, oh yeah, those are cool ideas. Next, we have The Boss of It All. Again, a movie I quite liked. I thought it was a pretty good comedy, just not amazing. And these movies I would cull from Lars Von Trier's filmography just so he had all bangers. But this is a good movie. Next, we have Europa. Not as high on this as everyone else, but I do love the sort of like formal presentation and the technical elements are pretty breathtaking. But yeah, it just doesn't fully grip me and I probably wouldn't watch it again ever unless like, I don't know, maybe when I get older and I get more into, I don't know, sort of like, I don't know, like maybe I'll appreciate when I'm older, but I can't really picture it. Like I'm pretty charitable with movies right now. I just thought the story could have been told a little better, but The technical elements are pretty fantastic, and there's some good ideas in here. Next, we have Manderlay. As a sequel to Dogville, really lackluster, but as its own film, it's pretty good. I watched Mark Kermode's review of Manderlay, and he said it was better than Dogville, which is a fucking crazy take. Absolutely crazy take. But Manderlay is really good. Manderlay is really good. Next, we have The Idiots. One that I think on rewatch I'll probably like more. I do have in the back of my head the fact that Sean Baker has this as one of his favorite movies of all time. I think it's like the best thing ever. So maybe on rewatch I'll appreciate it. I did watch it with someone who hated it, so maybe that was holding me back a bit, but it is pretty good. I just wish on first watch, I think you kind of get the point early on. I wish it took the premise further. And I think it kind of gets at that at the end. The ending, I think, should have been like half the movie, which is them going into like regular society, but it is as good. All right, this is where we enter GOAT territory, because yes, I have Nymphomaniac at, oh shit, what number are we up? 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. So yes, we have Nymphomaniac at number 7. Even so though, I love this movie. I really, really like this movie. It's not perfect. There are bits that don't work, but fuck, like it's like, it's a mess, but it's a mess I kind of adore and love, you know? You know any of those? Crazy sequences. Look, I talked about Nymphomaniac for 40 minutes, so you know how I feel about it. But in saying that, like, I think about this movie probably once a week, you know, in life. Something will happen. I'm like, oh yeah. Anyways, next, Dancer in the Dark. This is where we enter like masterpiece territory. After here, it's all just flawless movies for me. Like some of my favorite movies ever. So at the bottom of the masterpieces, at number 6, we have Dancer in the Dark. Love the songs here. Just again, like I mentioned, in order for this to be the masterpiece of the masterpieces of Lars, I would have wanted to connect with the sun a little more. But even saying that, this is pretty spectacular. Next at number 5, we have House That Jack Built, and this could go higher. I'm wondering if I could swap it with Melancholia, but you know, I'm trying to like hold on to some critical dignity here, you know, like Melancholia is objectively a better movie, but I kind of have more fun with House That Jack Built. But regardless, it's at number 5, all right? Because there are some things, the thing with House That Jack Built, and even Dancer in the Dark to an extent, but with the thing with House That Jack Built is if people had problems with it, I do kind of get it. Where there are these other movies where I'm like, I would put 10 toes down and be like, you're a goofball for having problems. Whereas House That Jack Built, as much as I love it, I get some people having problems with it. And honestly, even Dancer in the Dark, like that's the only one to me where I can see the manipulative argument, even though I love it. Next, are we... All right, so next at number 4, we have Melancholia. Fantastic movie. It's kind of Lars Von Trier's version of Oscar bait. I mean, it's not Oscar bait. It's still pretty bold. There's incredible visuals, incredibly dark storytelling. But I'd say it's kind of like not entry level, but it's an easy watch for Lars. I really love it though. There's both halves are fantastic. Kirsten Dunst is totally committed. It's wonderful. It almost feels like an outlier when I look at this selection of movies, but God, it's good. And again, posters, like he's just good at like striking visuals, but love this movie. I listen to the music from it all the time. That opening and closing section are just wonderful. Hell yeah. Next, we have Antichrist. This is number 3 for me. This is amazing. Like, I can't watch it too much. It is pretty full on. I need to like let it go and then come back to it. It's so good though. Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg are crazy. I love the psychosexual vibe for it. And to me, this is Possession, but better. I really like Possession. I have it back on the shelf. You can probably see. I love Possession. Antichrist kicks ass though. It's so good. And everyone has slightly different takes on it. It's vague without feeling like it has no idea what it's doing. It's an angry, gross movie, but it's also kind of beautiful. And I think the stuff that it explores around gender dynamics, around the war of the sexes, around this subversion of the Garden of Eden, it's all just awesome. It's full on, but thankfully it's not just shock value. It lives up to its reputation. Number 2, we have Dogville. I mean, this is just amazing. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, this is just an amazing... The fact that it's 3 hours and I'm never bored and I'm thoroughly entertained the whole time, I have to put it up here. I think Nicole Kidman's great. And I will just stress, all these 5-star movies, you could shuffle around the rank. I wouldn't be mad. Like, if you guys are having a conniption right now because Dogville is second, I mean, I could put Melancholia second on a good day. I could put Antichrist or House That Jack Built second on a good day. The only one that would never move in this ranking, I don't think it would ever move in this ranking, unless somehow his last film or his next film is better. The only movie I feel like will always have this permanent spot is Breaking the Waves. I love it. And that's not to say he hasn't improved as a filmmaker. That's not to say he hasn't done amazing stuff. This was a tight race, but Breaking the Waves is amazing, man. It's fantastic. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And again, please consider getting those memberships. The links are in the description below. If you want to hear me talk about movies the way I've been talking about movies, it really helps out the channel. I talk about stuff from the cinemas I don't have time to cover on the main channel. Stuff off streaming I don't have time to cover on the main channel. Just every movie I watch in general. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for considering. Thanks. Have a good day, guys. Thank you so much for watching.